Hello, welcome to our. Actually, got drops. I hope maybe someone can tell us if we have drops enabled. So we really want to
No,
thank the people at OTP for being nice enough to let us become an affiliate and help set that up.
yeah,
Um,
you know, uh, we were gonna keep doing this either way probably, but now you get a nice little something something for hanging out and listening to our nonsense. So, uh, hooray!
exactly. So if we're taking up your time and making you worse at silver, then hey, you at least get 5 packs for it.
And yeah, believe me, it will always be 5 packs. We may be known for talking too much.
So we've got, as usual. I'm here with Mike. We've also got our guest expert for Silver Best of Seven. Greg, you want to say a little something?
Sure. Expert may be a little bit strong, but I do appreciate you guys having me on. I've been watching the stream and always impressed with the info you guys put out. So happy to be here. Whoop.
Yep. No. Greg and I spent a lot of last year just like chatting about silver kind of all year, which was a lot of fun. So
Yeah, Mike.
he's
Mike was always my sanity check. So if I thought like, hey man, I got something that's a little bit out there, Mike would always reel me
yeah,
back
see,
in.
well, and see what happened was you were playing bronze, and I was like, silver's cool, play silver, and then you picked up silver and just like kicked my teeth in regularly. So
Well, and
I think
that's
that's
a
how I
perfect
ran into
segue.
you
Like,
too. Also, actually.
yeah, sounds right.
no, it happened. We were like, who is this Charles guy? He keeps killing us out here, and then
Oh
and then we
well,
ended up linking up and.
it's that yeah. I want to say my stated opinion was something more along the lines of like, how is he beating me with these cards? What does he know that I don't? And
Yeah. So we were like,
and it turns
we have
out
to
the
pull him
answer
in.
was quite a bit. So
But that's a perfect segue into like why I love silver. Is to me, it's one step above bronze in terms of when I say stratification, I don't mean bronze, iron, silver, that kind of deal. I mean like where the cards actually matter a little bit more to me. I played bronze for about a year and a half, and it always seemed very random. Um, and I just felt like you got a little bit better consistency with silver. So
I think
that
that's
was one of the big
true.
reasons I switched.
I think that's true. I also think last year it was less of a whale format.
That is true. Yeah.
Like there was the odd card. Cookie Rojas comes to mind that
Yeah.
like showed up and cost $1 million, but there wasn't just this like constant stream of 20, 30, 40K tournament edition cards that you felt like you had to get to play. So, but I was already hooked from last year. So
Speaking of tournament
Yeah, and
edition
I
cards, Vicarious, we are going to mention the new tourney rewards in the model. We obviously don't have them in the data, but we'll definitely mention
yep,
them in the model.
yeah. Frank Mazzucato is another big one.
So it's hilarious that you brought up both Rojas and Mazzucato because I think I paid over 40 grand for each of them. So
Yeah, but then like you won the PTCS silver tournament, so it was totally worth it.
oh no, it was a great investment. But at the
That
time, I
was
was like, I had some sticker shock. I'm not gonna lie.
oh
For
sure,
sil- for
sure, sure.
silver.
Yeah, that was our shared experience. And this is the last I'll talk about last year. Was I bought the first Cookie Rojas last year for 8K because some poor soul didn't know how much it was going to be worth. And Greg was the only other person that managed to buy one because it came out like like the cards today, the dead ball cards tonight are going to be playable in PTCS this weekend. They kind of did the same thing last year with Cookie Rojas. So we had the only two in the 128 team PTCS tournament, and Greg won the whole thing, and I got swept in the first round. So,
So your results may vary.
Yes.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I had the second best result, right? Like,
That's true.
if you're not going to win the whole thing, then get as much of your day back as you can.
That's true.
Fair enough. Yeah, I played a lot of silver last year too. Kind of right until there was this batch of silver cards released that was also the critical set of cards for a couple of the endgame missions. and then suddenly the prices just went through the roof, and that was kind of when I started looking
Yeah,
at other things.
I really lucked out there also. But like genuine luck, right? Like I was probably the most willing person in the game last year to like chase down the new cards and pay a little bit extra to try them out and like play on the bleeding edge. So I acquired most of those cards before that mission set rolled out, and got to feel like a genius for doing what, in the absence of that future event, would have been incredibly wasteful. So
Mm.
yeah, silver's great this year. Gold's really good this year also. I do agree though. If you want to go hard into dailies and weeklies, and they've certainly incentivized us to, a lot of these kind of fun, quick formats get put firmly on
And
the back burner. We'll say.
side note too, for the chat, I've also been kind of playing hokey pokey, 1 foot in, 1 foot out with silver and silver cap. So if you have any questions there, or um, I may interject some cap uh, commentary or information as well. So
Yeah, and I think that'll be particularly interesting as we look at the new cards.
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Oh
Okay.
man, Mr.
So
Black. I don't know what the model says about Tom Daly, but he's probably my favorite card in silver.
it's a fun
Which is not to
card.
say I think he's the best card in silver, right?
He's the glue. He's the glue that holds my team together.
So
I'll
all right.
explain. I'll explain why later.
Well, let's start with the overview. So you can see on the left kind of where the silver meta is. We've also put up what it was looking like the last time we did a silver stream back in June, just kind of for comparison. So the overall numbers are really pretty similar, right? Similar,
Drop.
really
I
similar
got a drop.
ERA, similar strikeouts, homers, walks. It's still a pretty right-handed meta. I guess one difference is that most managers have dropped from running 13 to just running 12 pitchers. And I guess maybe the other big difference is there are a lot more switch hitters in the silver meta now than there were back in June. And maybe a lot of that's just Tettleton, now that I think about it.
And also Tom Daly.
And also Tom Daly.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been a few others that come to mind as well. But one thing that sticks out to me in particular is the pitching split. Earlier in the cycle, we were looking at like 62 to maybe 64 right-handed, and it looks like it's crept up. I'm seeing the same thing in my data as well, where the rotational meta is still very, very heavily dominated by right-handed pitching.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So if you look at the overall shape, we've just kind of got at the top here, what are sort of typical ratings that you're going to run into actually in silver? So generally kind of anything in the 70s is about typical, where the pitching's maybe a little bit stuff heavier and a little bit lighter on control. And I guess the batting's actually pretty flat across the board. So yeah, just somewhere 70 to 75 is just a typical silver rating at this point, kind of for anything. So yeah,
Yeah,
should we start
definitely
talking
agree.
some catchers?
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
So maybe as a quick review, just here's what the catchers looked like the last time we did this. So the platinum cards, we've actually kind of had some bad luck about doing one of these streams and then 2 or 3 hours later, all the cards we talk about get replaced. So the
Right.
last
So we're
time,
we're probably willing like a completely bonkers 75 King Kelly into existence here or something.
something like that. Yeah, I think we were hoping that actually we might get the timing to be pretty good here because we've just seen what the new Silver Tournament Edition cards are going to look like. But yeah, it might be that we just find out that tonight a bunch of new dead ball cards get released that are perfect. So, but yeah, so
I think that
last time.
definitely would be interesting given the trend of, like, say, the Silver Weekly cap and some of the other formats have gone to some of the historical eras, so that actually wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I think it could. Look, I think it's great when new stuff gets released. You do want a meta to progress. So,
Yep.
um, all right. So where are we at this time around? I guess as usual, maybe we'll start with the model. So let me find the model. There's the model. All right. So at this point, we're all looking at special edition cards, but that's in part because the platinum cards are still listed as SEs. So our number one here
Yeah.
is Tettleton. Yep, APC. They were OTP was nice enough to let us have drops. So hopefully, at least you get something out of these streams now. So the Modelton loves Tettleton, kind of for the reasons we talked about before, right? That 100i in a switch hitter is just always something the model's going to love, and the defense is good enough. I guess combined with there not
the model
being
loves Tettleton.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say the model loves Tettleton because Tettleton is obviously excellent.
That too.
There's nothing not to like about the card, right? Its switch hits, its 3 true outcomes are pretty excellent.
And even for a little bit of bonus spice, he can play serviceable first base and right field as well. So
That's true.
Yeah, I think that's more useful when he's like your backup catcher in a higher cap format, but it is worth keeping in mind.
No, and that's actually that goes along with the strategy that when I build my cap rosters, which is short of very, very few exceptions, say Richardson, Elmer, guys like that. Everybody on my roster plays more than one position or is able to start, play plus defense at that position.
That's true. So you notice that Winninger's actually moved behind Ionetta here, and this is just a question of the new pitchers that have been released, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Just changing the meta a little bit and making Winninger not play as well against that set of pitching. This Mike Scioscia card is new, right? So we haven't actually seen that one. I don't know if any actually exist yet. I know a few of these cards have started to be in the daily perfect drafts, right? So it might be that one exists.
Possible. I think the tournaments that were not new. So I'm trying to walk through this in my mind. Monday morning with the live updates, all of the new format weekly tournaments spawned. I think those tournaments were eligible for new rewards, but none of the ones that were holdovers from last time spawned with new rewards yet. I think that's the case.
Yeah, so because I've noticed I've seen a few of them in the daily perfects.
Or no weeklies with new cards this week.
Yeah, the new weeklies will be next week, but some of the daily perfect drafts I think have had a few of these new tournament rewards.
So, either way, it's good to be aware of what's coming. Right?
Yeah. So Scioscia, really an interesting profile. 71 catcher ability is part of that 75 defense, so it's a little bit arm heavy. But it's a left-handed catcher that really does well against right-handed pitching. And so that's just a great fit for this meta. Yeah, Astor, that's a good point. The daily perfect drafts, are not going to have any of these silvers. Okay. Yes, that's a good point. So, Scioscia looks like he's probably a catcher I'm going to want to run. And Ionetta is still up there, even though he's one that everybody's going to have somewhere in their card deck, right?
Yeah, I mean, so to me, Scioscia looks playable. I probably won't roster him, but that's because, very specifically because I really, really, really like Tettleton as the starter, and then Tom Daly backing up both catcher and second base.
Yeah, completely agree. I actually have Daly starting V left as catcher and backing up second as well. So a little Charlie Dexter kind of situation there, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's basically John Beckwith except good.
Yeah, and Ionetta, man, he's been in and out of the meta. Ionetta in the meta, get it?
yep.
He's been in and out of the meta all year. You know, he had a really strong showing the first probably 2 or 3 weeks. When they nerfed the power, you know, he kind of disappeared for a while. But I've seen kind of an upward trend in you know, power playing up now. So I think he's kind of, you know, he's poking his head back in.
I think Ionetta would
You know,
get
at
back in
least
the
in the
meta.
conversation.
I think he'd get back in the meta if a couple more lefty starters get released.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if we go past the top three, at least in the model, Winiger fourth, the tournament bubbles fifth, and then Daly. But again, Daly is going to play multiple positions, so that's really valuable. John Beckwith behind him, who also plays multiple positions. The other new card maybe that's worth talking about, Javi Lopez ends up ninth in the model. So probably not going to be in the meta, but does have 103 power. So there might be some kind of format
Well,
where that power plays.
yeah, it's always good to be aware of who the outliers are.
Yeah, so Javi Lopez. Actually, hold on here. I can put him up. Where am I going to put him? I'll put him up just in the Shoestring Award for a sec, just so we can just to kind of show you what those ratings look like. Did that work? Yeah. So this is exactly the kind of shape that Warbot doesn't like. You know, with the really low I and kind of a lot of this is really coming from power. But there have got to be builds where that makes a lot of sense, or eras or something like that.
Yeah, there's almost certainly going to be an era tournament at some point where you want that shape.
All right, so what are the data giving us? The data, of course, are not going to have anything about Sosha yet, just because he doesn't exist. So yeah, Tettleton's up there, Ionetta's up there, Bubbles, so kind of the usual suspects from last time plus Tettleton. And I think that makes sense, right? It's really just telling you that at this point, Tettleton is the key catcher for the meta, and then you can kind of make some choices about what to do for the other spot. Is
That
that
sounds
about
right
fair?
to me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get distracted by Tettleton's eye and forget that he also is probably the premier power hitting catcher in Silver as well. So again, like I said earlier, that power is now playing up a little bit more. So I think you keep seeing Tettleton in this conversation, probably at least this high in the future.
I have a request for where Daly is in the observed data. And before we get into that, I do want to mention that observed data for part-time catchers gets a little weird. So
Yeah.
take it with a grain of salt.
Just looking. Daly does not seem to be in the top 10 or so in the observed data. But again, it's not really clear that you can pick out the catcher specifically. He ends up fourth in the observed data at second base.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Yeah, and just to tag onto that, DB, I do have him, even though he does play backup or he does start V left for me. I have him tagged as a second baseman, so that's also a possibility that he's just showing up as a second baseman
Well,
instead.
so Beckwith does show up as sixth in the observed data. Also, Jack Doyle shows up as
Huh.
fourth in the observed data at catcher. So,
Well, that's a fair
yeah.
point too.
So it sounds like what's happening is that Daly's not doing so well at catcher, but maybe he does well enough at second base that as your backup catcher, it's still a good use of the roster spot.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. Good. So let's see. Right. If you're going to run a platoon at catcher, which you're certainly going to need two catchers, so it's a reasonable thing to do. Warbot thinks the Tettleton, of course, makes the most sense versus righties because it's just hard to find. It's hard to find a left-handed catcher. And Ionetta still really works against lefties. That power plays way up, the eye plays way up. He's still a good enough platoon bat that I think he's entirely runnable.
Yeah, and if there was more left-handed pitching, I think that would be there'd be a much stronger case to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
100% agree.
You know, look for the release tonight, and look for the Platinum 2 release next week to maybe shake that up a bit. And if people start throwing more lefties, know who your options are.
Yeah. Let's see. Your biggest winner. Again, this is total wins rather than win rate, but that's Ionetta. Sorry, excuse me. The biggest winner is now Tettleton. My mistake. I just assumed it was Ionetta.
No, this is not surprising.
So enough people are running Tettleton now. Ionetta's actually winning a little more frequently.
Interesting.
Okay, so
I could see that though. Like if you didn't have daily, if you were running that Tettleton Ionetta option, like
Well,
I could definitely
they're
see
close
that.
enough together that that's not a meaningful distinction to me.
Yeah.
And I think what Greg was about to say, until I very rudely spoke right over him, was that if you are platooning the two, which is sort of the best argument for playing Ionetta at all right now, you probably have a plan. So people with plans tend to do better than people that just don't.
I really
Very,
love
very
platooning
insightful
catchers. Yeah.
analysis there. I know.
Well, I really love platooning catchers because that's the one position where you absolutely know that your number two option is going to play about 30% of the games anyway. So
Yep.
it almost just feels like a free platoon, where at every other position when you platoon, it's kind of costing you a roster spot, or it's costing you a little bit of a downgrade somewhere else. But you're going to run two catchers no matter what. One of them is going to play 30% of the time no matter what. So the platoon almost seems free when the meta's got both lefties and righties.
Yep. Very true. And sort of a spot where maybe you don't do that because Tettleton is a switch hitter and hits really well on both sides, and also Tom Daly exists and plays credible defense at catcher and at second base, and he's just the pieces fit together really well.
Yeah, although the
Yeah, I think it just
problem.
comes down to
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say it just comes down to preference and construction. What complements your team or what attributes you're after. I know that sounds probably common sense, but sorry. Go ahead, Charles.
Well, I think the other thing is if you're going to run just a pure backup catcher, then that also means that your backup catcher has to be someone you're willing to play against both lefties and righties.
Sure. And again, Tom Daly also switch hits, and right. So
Yeah,
it's just
No, I think Daly's great at that. Beckwith is great at that. Doyle's pretty good at that. But Ionetta, for example, I don't think works as well as sort of a both-sided backup. I think if you're going to run Ionetta, and probably looking at the card, I'm going to guess the same is true for Sosha. If you're going to run either of those, then I think you want to be platooning instead of just running a starter and a backup.
Yep, absolutely agree.
Yeah, and I have to say, final note on the Beckwith. I irrationally love that card. I keep coming back to it every so often. I know it's not best option or meta or whatever, but I just love the gap power that it has. I have it graded out at something like I think it's 70, 80 extra base hits per 600 plate appearances. It's insane.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite cards here. I think Don Money's the other one that I've been just thrilled with anytime I get into a
On
build.
money.
I have a love-hate relationship with Don Money, but
I have a love-love relationship.
We'll get to him in a moment.
Don Money in every format. Don Money for president.
Let's see. So, Mr. Black, that's a good point. You could have especially in a long tournament.
you get to run the cash money platoon if you want.
That's true. The ever so
let's not
powerful
pretend
cash
like that doesn't have value.
Oh yeah.
No, and That's an interesting point, Mr. Black. Like I do the same thing. So if I commit to an all righty rotation, all lefty rotation, it's 100% down the line, with very few exceptions. And I do that as just a quick side note, not necessarily with silver, but I do it in order to keep the same dudes on the field all the time and just wear them out with fatigue. So now I'm like, I want to induce the AI manager to make really bad decisions on substitutions and things like that. So there's a method to the madness in terms of running one side or the other for a rotation. For me,
Yeah, I think that's also a question of just how you want to optimize your builds, right? There are going
Sure.
to be one or two teams you might run into in a long tournament that are going to do something like that, and most of them aren't. So, do you want to build a roster that does well against, an all righty staff or something, or do you want to build a roster that's a little bit of a mixture?
This is something that I've had a lot of conversations with various people about for the last couple years. And I think the answer is it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? Like the best team for spamming best of 7 quicks might not be the best team to try to win a major tournament.
I would
Right?
agree with that.
Like quicks, you're trying to win your good matchups as quickly as you can and lose your bad matchups as quickly as you can and move on. Where in a like 128 or even 256 team tournament, I don't know if there have been any silver 256s, but
I think just
you usually want to
128.
hedge a little bit more, right? Like you want to make sure that you have a chance to get through your bad matches.
No, that's completely fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so for the budget, speaking of getting through the easy ones quickly, when we all agree on Tettleton, this is gonna be a long stream tonight. So fortunately, we've got drops.
There you go.
Nice.
So I think for a budget pick, there are a lot of options here. The last time we had really tried to go under about 1,000 points, but now that many of the packable silver cards are part of various missions, really a few thousand points is what a lot of them are going to cost you. So Tettleton
And
is
besides,
absolutely. So go ahead. What?
besides, all of you just made like several 100,000 points on live spec, so don't worry about it. This is fine.
Yeah.
So Tettleton would be a perfectly good answer here. You can get Tettleton for something like 3,000 points, and if you don't have a Tettleton yet and you're thinking about playing silver, it's probably worth picking one up before they disappear from packs in a week. Of course, they may be replaced by something
Absolutely.
better. But
It may be. I think it's unlikely that Tettleton will disappear completely. Right? Having someone that like you feel confident starting from both sides of the plate is incredibly valuable in a lot of formats. So,
see, I actually predict
I
Tettleton
have
will
one and
disappear.
only one. I'm not trying to drive up the price here, but it is probably worth your while to try and track one down before they disappear.
I do think you should
I would agree
track
with
one
that.
down. I think there are a lot of cap formats he's going to play regardless because of the eye. But I actually do think he's going to disappear. I think usually the profile for a silver catcher is going to be a lot better defense than any of the cards in the current meta. And if you have a good defensive catcher, they're going to play both sides anyway of a platoon because you just want that catcher ability in your lineup. So I'm kind of waiting for
Sure,
I love like a 2018 Hedges or something some kind of
it would not surprise me if what winds up happening is we get a new kind of like you always want to start this guy catcher, and then Tettleton slides into the role that Tom Daly has now, where he's backing up your catcher both ways and also backing up first base.
if he's good enough to play first, yeah.
Oh, I think that's completely.
100 eye is gonna play in a lot of formats.
Yeah. I think he's probably safe from power creep for a while, but I would agree there. I think he's especially with the state of the market for the platinum cards, it's only going to go up. So
yeah.
Buy. This is not financial advice.
So I think we will mention Ionetta here simply because he's so cheap as a shoestring budget option, but really Tettleton should also go there. And if you're serious about building a silver roster right now, I think you want to get yourself Tettleton.
You absolutely do.
All right, what are we actually running
Agreed.
here? So I'm running the Tettleton and Ionetta platoon you mentioned. And then Greg, you're running, is this a platoon or is this really you're running daily as a backup?
It kind of changes. I'm a habitual tinkerer. So sometimes I have him starting at second. Sometimes I have him starting V left. Right now, I have him starting V left at catcher, I believe. So I do platoon him, but if all things considered, if in a vacuum, Ionetta and Daly at catcher, Ionetta is the better choice V left. Daly scratches an itch for some positional flexibility that I need. So that's why I play him over Ionetta. But Ionetta is, like I said, in a vacuum, the best choice. V left.
I think so. And I think if I were running a multi-position guy, I would still run Beckwith probably. But that's just partly the way my build works out. I need the shortstop instead of the second baseman.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
I love that card.
All right, first base. So again, just kind of to remind you where we were at. The last time we talked, it was Kruk, it was Edgar, and then there was kind of a gap. Bob Bailey was up there in the observed data, despite not really having much of a glove at first. So where are we at now?
We've since come to understand that the only thing that matters at first base is how tall you are. So maybe it wasn't as bad as it sounded at the time.
Was Bob Bailey the one? There was one I was looking at because there's a 74 Bailey and a 75 Bailey, and
yes, there is.
But is that the one where the two cards actually have different heights?
Oh, that I don't know.
No.
There's one that I found in the database. Okay, that's really funny. So I can tell people are listening because I just checked before, and there were 8 Mickey Tettletons for sale, and currently there are 2.
There you go.
So
congratulations to the 6 new Tettleton owners. I think if you want to run silver tournaments, you'll be glad that you have him.
Yeah, he won't disappoint.
There are a few cards that we're going to talk today that I would just go get this card, and that's one of them.
Okay, so in terms of the model, same top 3 as last time in the model, except that Lou Blue now moves just ahead of Edgar, just because of the pitching that's come out. But they're still both pretty close, and really Edgar still is a platoon bat, and Lou can play both ways.
Yeah, nothing really to say here that's new.
No,
Okay.
Love Kruk.
Yeah, and as for the data, Kruk has also moved ahead of Bob Bailey. That Joe Harris is interesting. I really love the bronze Joe Harris. Huh. This Joe Harris just doesn't quite work as well in terms of the shape, I think. But it's perfectly runnable according to the data.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not a card that I would look at and think I really want to try this, which I like playing all kinds of weird cards. So if it doesn't jump out to me as something that looks interesting, that usually means there's not much there, right? I have a much higher false positive rate than I have a false negative rate. But
although the funny thing is, Joe Harris ends up 4th in the model, and the model thinks he'll have a higher WOBA than Edgar.
Well,
just a tip.
The I is high for something that doesn't show up as blue. The BABIP is high for a yellow, right? They're just right at the top of their color categories.
Devil Dog.
92 gap power is a lot. 92 gap power is a lot.
And that's there's 2 things that my eye first goes to when I look at a new card in silver specifically. And this is going to sound goofy. It's gap and eye. And for for Joe Harris, he's got both. Like Mike said, that green 78 is a little deceiving. That is on the higher end. So I don't know. It's an interesting shape. definitely like to check that card out.
It's such a weird card for me because there are almost no cards that are both high I and high avoid K. Usually they either walk in, strike out a lot because they take a ton of pitches, or they put everything in play and they don't strike out but they don't walk. And this is one of the only cards that really has a shape where it's got both.
Yeah.
And blue as well. So there's something about first
that's
baseman,
fair.
I guess.
It's but it's not like the shape that you might conventionally want to look for in your first baseman, right?
No.
Like stereotypically, it's like, okay, well, this is where my like just giant, huge man with the 45-ounce bat hits, and he's out here to hit dingers and not much else. And that's not really any of these. Well, no, that's definitely
no,
Bob
but
Bailey.
if you want one of those, yeah, Crux. Yeah. But actually, if you want one of those, so we'll mention a couple of the others in the model. So number 5 in the model is the new Mo Vaughn card. Here, I'm just going to put up Mo Vaughn real quick. We won't have any
I
data
don't know
on
what
him,
the
but just
card
to
looks
show
like,
you.
but I remember watching him in real life, and I'm hopeful.
So you can see he's got, a bit of a split. You really want to play him more as a platoon bat, and you can see why he just comes in behind Kruk.
Yep.
But
Kruk is one of those cards where it honestly just feels unlikely that he's going to be blown past anytime. Right? He might get crept out at some point, but it's going to be something that's like just a little bit better.
I think so, yeah.
Well, and he's so good on his split that even on his weak side, his quote weak side, he's still above league average. So the exposing him to that weak side split, the downside just isn't as bad as some other options as well.
Well, and I think that's a real part of why Edgar has fallen off so hard.
Yeah.
Oh,
he just
yeah,
doesn't hit righties very well at all, and you can see the breakdown of pitching in the top left. Right, there's just not a lot out there for him.
Couple other the other new card that's worth looking at. That hold on, he may not actually. Is he not in this version of the database? Here we go. So yeah, one other that's worth looking at if you're looking for some really high gap power. We've got Ed here. Also 88 defense at first.
I appreciate dodging trying to pronounce that last name.
Ed.
Is it Kanechi? Is it Kanichi? I don't know.
I was gonna guess Kanichi, but I don't actually know.
Let's see if the internet knows. You guys keep going. Oh wow, it's Kanetsi.
Kanetsi, interesting.
I'm sorry, Kanetsi.
Okay.
Ed Kanetsi. Which
that's.
But this is also a card with a ton of gap power, pretty splitless, and really not a bad card to pick up as a new tournament option.
No, I think that gap power, especially with the eye, that's what Beckwith lacks. Beckwith's got terrible eyes, like 40, 45, something like that. But big time Eddie K, because I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Big time Eddie K has comparable gap power to Beckwith, and like I said earlier,
look at that Ed Kanetsi card, and look at Joe Harris.
Yeah,
right. He's just like, what if Joe Harris was even more Joe Harris than Joe Harris?
Yep.
He's got 15 points of gap power and another 8 points of BABIP, and a little bit less power, but that's fine. It's and look at the defense. He's so tall.
Hey,
Pretty
man,
much.
That's 90% of playing first base.
I'll just mention one other new
watch.
card. This Jim Bottomley, at least the model just doesn't think this one's likely to play. Has some power, definitely a platoon type bat. That was actually a tiny bit of data here, actually.
Yeah, that card's not very interesting.
So, all right. So pretty much that's where we're at. If you're going to run a platoon, not too surprisingly, the best platoon is still Kruk and Edgar. Edgar's really a right-handed version of Kruk. It's just that there are more right-handed pitchers in the meta, so Kruk's the more useful card. But I'm also running Edgar in basically every format I can fit him in, every cap format. The only place I'm not running the Silver Edgar are the ones where I want to run the Diamond Edgar.
Yeah, well, 71 versus 79 is a very significant difference in cap formats.
Yeah.
I think it is worth mentioning what Greg said earlier also about these two cards, which is that Kruk's will say off split is much stronger than Edgar's.
That's true. So you can run Kruk against lefties and be okay, whereas Edgar really just shouldn't face right-handed pitching.
That always has value, right?
Yeah.
You always want to at least be thinking about like what happens. What are the situations where my players are going to be put where I don't want them, and how are they going to fare? Right? Because they change pitchers for your players in particular, or John Kruk is tired and Edgar has to come in and face righties.
Yeah.
Which might be a reason why, even in a platoon right now, you'd run like a Joe Harris instead of Edgar, because Joe Harris is considerably better VR. Or VR.
I think if you're going to do that, I'd run Lou Blue instead, though. You got a switch hitter.
Lou Blue is another good option. I was just comparing the two righties, but yes, it's maybe a bad constructed scenario because there's an obvious third option that's just entirely better. But so especially again keeping the environment in mind, right? Like the most often unfortunate situation one of your players is going to be in is a right-handed batter facing right-handed pitching. So this is not a great time to be running splitty righties.
Yeah.
Which again, Edgar falling down the observed list.
Let's see. Biggest winner. I'm actually not sure who that's going to be because Kruk and Edgar are still kind of tough to get.
It's got to be Kruk, right? No, it's Bob Bailey. It's Bob Bailey. It's Bob Bailey.
It is Boog Powell.
What?
Just because he's still being run so much more. He's not winning all that often, but he's still got the most wins just by number. You can see with rate, Bob Bailey at 60, winning once out of every 16.2 is still doing the best with rate. But
I guess Bob Bailey played it first, right? Because if you look at the bottom left here,
I think Bob Bailey played at third, or probably at DH.
Or in right field, I think is the other place you can hide him. Am I making that up? I might be making that up.
No, let me see here. Bailey. No, he plays left field.
Left field. Okay.
Yeah. So there was once upon a time I had him backing up left. I actually start him v left at first. Edgar fell off for me. It was a little too much. I do like, again, if we're talking about weak side splits.
Yeah, go ahead.
Bailey's weak side splits are still playable. Probably not best option v right, but they're still at least average or above average, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. If you want a budget pick, Kruk is still expensive, Edgar's still pretty expensive, but you can just get Lou Blue really cheaply right now, and he's just perfectly fine.
Yep.
All right, what are we actually running here? As you were mentioning, so you have a Kruk, and so you're running Kruk and Bailey. I don't have a Kruk, so I'm running Lou Blue on the other side. I still just think it's worth playing Edgar to clobber every lefty I face, and I just hope that people throw more lefties against me.
So Bailey really only starts at first for me because I'm sure anybody that's been paying attention to the format knows that there's a huge traffic jam at third base this year, especially for all the V left
Yeah, like,
splitty third baseman.
as was mentioned last time we did this, it was very possible to run a team with like 6 third basemen on it. Right?
Oh no,
It's just,
there was a time where we had it all. Like I had everybody that was eligible marked for third base just as a joke or whatever. But and I had like 7 or 8. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, Bailey he's perfectly fine at third. But first V left was where he shoehorned in for me because I'm a big Willie Jones believer. And what was the other one? There's another. I don't know. I had to cut good cards because that's how good those two are. So, anyways,
All right. So, yeah. Should we go on to second?
I think we should.
All right. So
Absolutely.
last time we talked about second base, Grantham kind of had popped to the top of the list in the model. Gant and Don Money were still a little bit ahead of him in the observed. So
And Charles has not stopped talking about George Grantham on any stream in any format since.
he's a great
love that
card.
I'm not saying he's not a great card, to be clear.
So surprisingly enough, at second base, the model really likes George Grantham. Probably not shocking anybody at this point. Look, 100i is just great. We've talked about Grantham a lot. He can play first, he can play left, but he's really a second baseman ideally. This Dan Ugla card is one that I guess we're going to see starting next week, right?
Sounds right.
Yeah, I believe it's in the new crop. Yeah.
Dan Ugla, another player from I hesitate to say my childhood, but my youth perhaps. It was in the past. I was young once.
Oh, I'm interested to see where some of the new releases go. Grantham's good. There's a couple other good options, but
I remember Dan Ugla being someone that hit like 240 and 45 home runs.
Yeah.
But
that may not have ever happened, but that's what I remember.
I don't think there's as big of a distinction at second base as you'll see at some of the others. So to me, I do hope that there's some new meta cards or new talent injected at second base just to kind of spice that up a little bit.
Yeah, so it looked like for the most part the special editions that are coming out for the tournament don't seem to play, other than Ugla. Doyle's up here, Don Money, Ben Zobrist, Daly, who we've talked about a bunch. So the new Justin Turner is actually eligible at second, even though I think that card's got to be much more of a third baseman. But it is kind of interesting that he's a two-position option, right?
I'm trying to remember Justin Turner playing second base, and I'm having a hard time.
I don't remember Justin Turner playing second base at all.
Well, presumably he did at some point.
I plead the fifth. I'm not qualified to make a statement on that.
So you plead the fifth. You have something to hide here? Are you the?
No.
That's about self-incrimination. What?
So Justin Turner is 2018 Justin Turner is almost fully
in his career.
Trained.
Early in his career, he played some second base.
So this is listed as a 2018 Turner, and he's not quite fully trained, but almost fully trained.
Well, according to Baseball Reference, he did not play any second base that year, but he did off and on. Really, from 2009 to 2015, it looks like he may have filled in here and there on their second baseman's off day.
So he has he has a solid looking rating at second, 60 trainable to 64, but it's only 54 range. So
you're going to tell me it's like all an error in double play?
Yeah, he really is a third baseman. But that's probably the only real one of the new cards that's going to come out that plays. So I think it's really Ugla is the only new one in the meta here. As for the observed data, pull that one up. So Don Money is still just crushing the observed data. And it's interesting to see Kennedy up there, right? It's a limited sample. I'm still not convinced that card should stay up there. The model definitely doesn't like the eye. You know, the defense is going to be good, but just doesn't think the bat's there. Have you looked at Kennedy at all?
Yeah, I mean, he's historically, I mean, all the way back to I think 21, maybe even 20. Every year that he has a card, that card is so awesome. So like this year I want to love this card, but I just can't bring myself to do it because with I the way that it is, he's running into the same thing as Beckwith, that 45-ish I. But the problem is that he's almost 20 points below in gap power, so he doesn't bring that same. I don't know, man. I just don't like the shape of the card
I really wanted to
for
like that card.
Kennedy.
Yeah, I really wanted to like Kennedy, but the thing is, the biggest value of Kennedy for me is that he plays 4 positions in the infield. But Don Money does exactly the same thing and just does it better.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I dislike about Kennedy, if I'm doing this off the top of my head, so I believe his infield range is a little bit on the low side for me to start him at short. Spot start here and there, he could do it, but I wouldn't want him taking any meaningful number of innings at short, if that makes sense. So to me, I think that card is not. There's probably not as much utility there as maybe advertised on the back of the card.
Yeah, Kennedy's 72 range and Money is 82. So it's a big difference in range for a shortstop.
Yeah, absolutely. 75 is kind of my Goldilocks. Like, that's my arbitrary threshold that I made up for infield range at silver this year.
It's at least in the right ballpark, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. If you're going to run a platoon, then Warbot says that you can play Gant at second. I still like Gant better as a left fielder, even though he's an excellent second baseman as well. But as a platoon bat, you certainly could run him at second. Um, let's see. Our biggest winner is Grantham, right? He's cheap, he's available easily, and it's just a great card. Um, I mean,
And
really,
again,
Grantham's just the card you want here still.
unless you've been under a rock or not watching the stream for the last couple months, you will know of George Grantham and his exploits.
Yeah.
Yeah, get yourself a Grantham. It's a great card. You can use it in every format.
If you were going to get yourself a Grantham, you would have by now.
Fair enough. But I will tell you, you can get him on a budget.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
he's available for under 600. In my eyes, he's the best V right second baseman in the game. The end. That's all I got to say about Grantham.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so what are we running? Well, as anyone that's heard me for the past however many weeks, you will not be shocked to know that I'm simply running Grantham. I'm even running him on the weak side just because there aren't a ton of lefties, and it's kind of one of the places that I can skimp a little bit. You're not running Grantham. So.
Am I not?
Oh,
No. Sorry. Let me see this. Sorry, I have it changed because I had to work him into. I have Grantham in left field now, but I had him starting. I thought when I did the.
I see. You're not running him at second. You're running him at left. Okay.
Yeah, normally I do. He's far more suited for second than left, but his V right bat is just too. It's one of those ones that like I just got to get him in the lineup. So.
Yep. So you're running daily here in Money, which just gives you a ton of flexibility. So I see there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, I love Don Money V left. V right, that's where, earlier I said kind of love hate is Money's burned me a couple times V right, but I think he's a super solid option at any position that he play second, third, short. the entire left side of the infield. He's
I
he can
wouldn't play him at
start at
first,
any of those.
but yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't start him there. You could have him back up if you need, but like
Oh, absolutely.
second, third short, like you could start him anywhere, and he's in that conversation.
Don Money is on the short list of players for me that uh, I love having on my team in a cap tournament, so that I can run basically 5 players at 4 positions and keep them all fresh.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
easiest to do when you have someone like him that can just like back up every infield position every 4th day, right? Like that's Don Money, that's Desi Relaford, that's Jeff Raboulet, right? Like you just get these utility infielders that, for whatever reason, at the position that they're listed, get rated what feels like super low, right?
Yeah.
For what you get from the card, it feels like Don Money should be a low 80s card, but I'm not complaining.
I also do think Money's not nearly as good at third as he is at second. The third in particular, the bats, as we're going to see, are just a lot better.
Oh, sure. I like Don Money as a second baseman. I like him as a shortstop.
Yeah, I agree.
I like him as a backup third baseman, but he should never be your primary option there.
So,
If you own a Hojo or let's see, a Bob Bailey can play there too. Willie
well,
Jones.
we can go on and talk about third if we're. Should we talk about third a little bit?
Talk about the most stacked position of any position in any format in the game, maybe.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So last time it was Willie Jones, Hojo, and Josh Donaldson was still up there. Now that we're a little bit further along and we got some new things released, we've got a new winner. Or at least we will when the card starts existing.
Oh wow, that is not what I expected.
That's going to be on defense, I assume, over Hojo.
Yeah. There's a big gap in defense over Hojo. Hojo's bat's clearly going to be. I mean, you can just compare them, right? Hojo's bat. You're essentially getting a few points of sort of contact.
Right has better BABIP. Hojo has better BABOP. It's for those of you that have not been around the stream for very long. BABOP is what you expect it to be when you stand it next to BABIP.
Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes you get your batting average from balls out of play. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair. Yeah, I think so. So the model has Hojo about 14 points of WOBA better than Wright, but the defense more than makes up for that in the model.
Yeah, I don't know how that 77 defense breaks down, but I do know that Willie Jones always felt like an elite option at third base defensively in Silver, and if Wright is close with that batting profile, it's not at all surprising that the model loves the card.
So Wright is 75 range, 56 error, and a whopping 88 arm.
Oh yeah, that's like exactly the shape you're looking for at third base.
It's a pretty representative card too. The other thing with Wright is he's only a 73 overall, so he's also going to be a really good cap card.
I was about to point that out as well. Although it is worth mentioning that being a switch hitter is worth a little more in cap formats typically than it is in open formats, because you typically have less opportunity to run true platoons. So
yeah, but David Wright's actually not that splitty.
Keep an eye out.
So Wright against lefties, 2 points higher BABIP, 2 points higher power. 8 points of gap power, 5 points of eye. So really not much of a difference.
Sounds to me like we've got another very good option then.
Yeah, I think so.
But if you paid $50K or whatever for your Hojo, keep running Hojo and don't feel bad about it.
No, and Hojo is also an excellent cap piece as well at 71. If you look at his V-right bat, it's among the best in the format, if not.
Do you guys think we can keep prices on these new cards from going out of control if we like
Well, good luck.
advocate. Like this David Wright card, yeah, it should probably sell for like 20K.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've put that out into the world, and we'll see if it takes.
there he
I'm
goes.
guessing it won't. Let's
Yeah,
see.
probably not.
If you were to go further down the list, so Josh Donaldson now ends up fourth. Still a really solid card. A couple other cards I'll just put up. So fifth and sixth, there are a couple of cards that we haven't really seen yet. So just to show you what they look like. So we've got this Justin Turner. So here's what that looks like. So unlike the Turner here, this one's not splitty, right? Remember last year we got this gold Turner that was incredible V left, but really had to be a one-way bat, kind of like the Edgar Martinez this year. This Turner can play both ways, right? And as we were just discussing, does play second a little bit. So, yeah, I don't know if that's one you'd look at running.
Huh. Yeah, potentially. Do you have? This is the upcoming release, correct?
Yeah, so because they're in the
Okay,
card
yeah.
database and they're in newly generated tournaments, but they're not in any of the current set of weeklies.
Yeah, I know the other Turner. I think we had a Turner this year. Didn't. I don't. Nah, I think I'm misremembering. But yeah, I'd be curious. Like I said before, there's a huge logjam. I think it's going to have to be a really, really good option. It looks like it could be. I'd like to see what the data says, but
Yeah, the model
certainly is in
says
the
that the bat's
conversation.
good, but the model has Turner behind Josh Donaldson, for example.
Mm.
So I think anyone behind Donaldson's not going to end up playing because Donaldson's just too easy to get. The other card, the one that comes in sixth in the model, is this Pinky Higgins, who is eligible for your, or I guess he won't exist before the upcoming PTCS though, but he would have been eligible era-wise. So this is the other one to kind of look at. Again, though, probably just not a good enough bat, and the defense again is worse than Donaldson.
72 is not terrible. I mean, I'd like to see how that breaks down, but 76i is not terrible. So if you're looking at like potentially just that V left split, say Willie Jones, because you don't want to drop 60K on a silver card. I mean, he's certainly in the conversation there. I really, really like the gap, the eyes. It's not outstanding, but it's above average. I think that's an interesting card.
So for comparison, Donaldson 74 range, 87 arm, and then Higgins 64 range, 84 arm.
Okay.
So all right, that's probably it for the new ones, right?
But I'm playing Josh Harrison for two reasons. One is that I'm a big Josh Harrison homer, and the other is that his name is apparently Jim.
Oh man.
This was a bug when the database got all messed up last week, right? Like, and all the build a lineup players were marked as dupes with like no stats. All of the Harrisons were named Jim for a minute there.
All right. So as for the data, so here's what we're actually observing. Hojo's up top, and yeah, George Kell, who someone was mentioning, does end up third in the data.
Hey. Oh, that's a funky card.
Kell is interesting. I can't bring myself to either jettison Hojo or Willie Jones or any of the other third basemen I have on the roster for him, though.
I was hoping for a moment there that you were going to say Kell is interesting and just like not say anything else. Just move on.
He's
that
neat.
card is interesting. All right, who's VR?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Charles.
No, I was just going to say, so Kell is kind of fun. He is not even in the top 10 in the model. The the model would rather play the bronze chipper, which to be fair is an excellent bronze, but the model would rather play the bronze chipper at third over Kell. Also likes Eddie Yost, Encarnacion, Bob Bailey. Pretty much every third baseman with a pulse, the model seems to like more than this Kell. So it's kind of interesting that he ends up that high in the data. I think partly it's because that defense comes from the wrong shape. So Kell's defense, it says 70 at third base, but it's 56 range, 74 arm, 95 error.
Oh, okay.
What Kell is this incredible platoon bat. So here, just to show you, I'll put up Kell versus left. And that's basically why Kell's playable, right?
Doesn't that indicate that you need to fix something in your model? Asks Baltar. Baltar. One of those.
It might. So
it could. Yeah, it could. I'll let Charles answer this since it's his model, and then provide some thoughts if he doesn't cover what I'm thinking here.
So I guess there are a few things. First off, the model's not going to be perfect. It's a model for what's going on. There are always things that we find where we can improve it and make it a little bit better. So one thing that's definitely true with Kell is he's incredibly splitty. Here, I'll put him up the other way also. He's incredibly splitty. And in the observed data, it's not really easy for us to tell what the usage is and whether somebody sort of should be thought about as a one-way or two-way bat. If I run just a versus left model, give me a second and I can kind of tell you where that comes out, but I assume Kell will end up quite a bit higher there.
And in terms of platooning or splitting or whatever, you can't. Oh, jeez. Sorry, you distracted me, Charles. I just totally derailed right there. My bad.
So basically, what it comes down to is the model just absolutely hates the glove. Versus left, the model thinks that Kell will put up the second highest WOBA, second highest OBS, etc., behind Bob Bailey. But it just thinks there's such a big difference in the glove that he's not a third baseman. It really sees him as someone that has to DH, except the bat's not good enough to DH. And I don't know whether that means that the model's wrong about third base, whether it's something about kind of the platoon stuff. I don't think it's a sample size thing because you got 7,400 plate appearances.
Well, it could be, right? Like, so the two thoughts I have there are one, even with samples of this size, you would expect, I don't know, one or two players to have like significantly out of you would expect them to either be underperforming or overperforming in a noticeable way. So like it could be that George Kell's data is just skewed for whatever reason, and it just makes the model look worse than it is. It's also possible that weird things happen in this game when it comes to outliers. And George Kell, certainly against left-handed pitching, has some extreme outlier numbers on his card, where I'm imagining the model you might expect the model to be a little bit worse at predicting outcomes.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it now, and it looks like the model's doing pretty well on the bat. The big difference is the model thinks that Kell's glove is almost unplayable at third because that defense is really made up almost entirely of kind of an error rating. And the WAR that we're seeing says that the defense is tolerable enough at third that you can then get that bat in the lineup. And I think this is part of why we try to show you both the model and the observed data, is this is somewhere where as a manager, you've got to decide. Do you think that the glove is good enough? Do you think something's weird with the WAR calculation in the game? Do you think the model is going to be right in the long term and this is just a bit of a fluctuation? It might be a sliders thing. So for example,
Oh
you
yeah, that
probably
too.
want a little bit
Absolutely.
different, you know, like I tend to guard the lines a lot. So that changes a little bit the way I think about defense at first and third, I suppose. Some managers won't do that. Um,
Yep, and please don't take anything that I was saying as like a defense of the model in particular, right? Like it's clearly at worst pretty good. Um, and there are all kinds of reasons that it might not match up with observed stats, and some of those are, you know, the model has a gap somewhere, and some of those are the data is a little funky.
Well, I see it in my
Uh,
model
yeah,
all
that's
the time
actually
too.
JDA has made an excellent point here, which is that the way the game calculates war is kind of screwy and unreliable.
yeah, so I think really this is a good question about Kel, and I don't really know what the answer is. I think for myself as a manager, I tend to lean more toward the model, but of course, that's in part because I've invested a bunch in developing a model. So I've clearly got a bias toward doing that. And I think you as a manager should kind of look at both the data and model and think about what's the best fit for what you're trying to build. I think that's the most fair thing we can say.
Yeah, I think you see it all the time too. In my data, I see probably about oh gosh, I don't know, probably 5-10% of when I do my regressions, 5 to 10% I have to trim those because they're outlier. They're so far, but they don't match up with what we would think of it as a linear, function. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's to me that's I wouldn't say common, but it's something that does occur.
Yeah. Okay. So what do we actually look at with a platoon? It might be you want to think about Kel with that bat. If you're convinced that the defense is tolerable, then you probably do want to look a lot at Kel at least as a platoon bat. Uh, Warbot's version of a platoon here is that you want to run Hojo and Willie Jones. And Willie Jones in particular versus lefties is just incredible. He's got to be platoon probably, whereas Hojo maybe has less of a split. But if you can get Willie Jones on his good side, I think he plays even better in gold because there are more lefties there, and I am running him in gold.
Hmm. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Lee Jones is awesome.
Let's see. So APC is asking about sliders. So for me, I'm adjusting the sliders. It's not that as much that I'm adjusting the sliders to my players as that I have an idea of kind of what sliders I want for my pitching staff, and then I adjust the players I pick to the sliders.
Yeah, that makes some sense. For me, it's a mix, right? Like, there are definitely some sliders that are set based on how I want my team to play, and then there are other different sliders that are set, excuse me, that I set based on what an individual player is good at. I'm not as particular, like, you know, this player doesn't need to be a master base runner or whatever, right? Like,
I think I do change it based on the meta at least. So, for example, really early in the cycle, when we had this incredibly high scoring meta, and basically everyone that got on base was going to come around and score.
mhm,
Then I didn't tend to do things like guard the lines because I was more interested in cutting off extra singles than preventing doubles.
sure.
Now, in kind of a more typical format, I'm guarding the lines more often, I'd say. And in the lower scoring formats, then I'm doing it as strongly as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I do the same. I have my line guarding cranked to the max.
I just click the whichever one is the do random stuff.
Sabermetrics. I heard about that. on the internet. So the sabermetric strategy or whatever,
Oh
the
man.
preloaded.
Yeah.
I
No.
like the preloads that I like the preloads where you can actually essentially just put a manager in.
Give me the Cap Anson preloads, except don't because that guy's a jerk. And
Yeah.
super dead.
That's funny. There is a Cap Anson manager in the game, despite not being a Cap Anson card. Let's see. All right, the winnerist third baseman is Bob Bailey. I still don't know how much of this is Bailey being played at third versus DH. You know, Don Money's list is a
Hard to
third
know.
baseman, and he's on 90% of winning rosters. I don't think we've talked about Bob Bailey as a third baseman here just because the glove is so bad.
It's pretty rough. For as good as the bat is, I just can't bring myself to do it. You know, if you're in a pinch, he could. Ugh, I don't even want to say play backup, but nah, I don't even know that I would back him up at third. But he can play it, and he's not a total train wreck, but it's not great.
Oh, goodness. All right, I'm going to respond really quickly.
If you
Black.
hand him a map, he can find third base.
When are we getting a stream for Bronze Live, the Richest Tourney format?
Oh, no.
My response to that, and please feel free, Charles or Greg, to disagree with me if you think that I'm off base here. But the joy in that format is the chaos. And anything that we would do to try and rein it in would be doing a disservice to the community. So I think it's in everyone's best interest that we don't touch that format.
I think it's extremely exploitable for throwing together meme teams, but other than that, like just because of how random, but whatever.
Yeah, the most important thing you need for a double elimination tournament is just good RNG.
It's true.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the few formats where you can pretty much just tell the AI to set your roster, and you're not too far behind someone that's fine-tuned everything. I'll admit I do fine-tune everything when I play it, but I'm not doing that much better than 50-50. Right?
I imagine that's more out of a sense of obligation than it is like an edge that you're expecting to find.
Yeah, I think I at least like to feel that when I win the coin flip, I can pretend it's because of a good choice I made. And then when I lose the coin flip, of course, it's just the coin flip.
It's because the format is random? Yeah.
All this RNG. That's my excuse.
My excuse is that I'm bad.
Let's see. All right. Shoestring budget. Well, again, there are a lot of good options here on a shoestring budget. But I think the easiest one is just to point out that Josh Donaldson is so much cheaper than all of these and just completely playable. You know, you notice if you look at the WAR, observe for Josh Donaldson, he's second there. He's doing, a hair better than Willie Jones, right? So you don't really need to spend up. It's more fun if you want to, spend up and find something cool here. But you don't need to do it. You can just run Josh Donaldson, and it works fine.
And I think Josh Donaldson is probably your most readily available option, or your best option, the right. It's readily available, either packable missions, whatever. There's just not a lot of good V right third baseman, which is why Hojo is so expensive, but worth the investment. Why Josh Donaldson's a good pick though is his defense. He plays plus defense, and he's okay V right. So
yeah, I think he and Don Money, I think, are the two really excellent cards from that set. And maybe I'd put in a plug for Ruggiano as well. Now that I think about it,
Ruggiano is very underrated,
especially in sort of a silver floor cap format where he's free, just as a 3-position outfielder. If he were eligible for bronze, he'd be one of the best bronze options.
Yeah, he's to me he's the silver FP Santangelo.
Yeah,
he kind of plays all three. Okay, not badly, but he plays them all at a pretty decent level.
Let's see. So what are we running?
I think
Well,
FP Santangelo is better than that, but
so
I'm
looking at what
I'm an
we're
FP
running.
truther.
Yeah. So I have not spent 50K on a Hojo, although I probably would if someone wants to sell me one. So I'm running Don Money and Josh Donaldson. That's a platoon I can get for under 1,000 points if I want to, and they're just great.
It's true.
And you did spend 100,000 on your platoon, I guess.
I did. Yeah, this is probably, I don't know, 20% of the value of my team right here is in these two cards. Willie Jones, I can't say enough about him. V left, he's just a monster. I don't think it's a good investment if you're not serious, not serious about the format. But if you're just kind of trying it out, or whatever, don't spend money on but Willie
I,
Jones in particular.
Well, Willie
I recommend
Jones.
buying a Willie Jones 2.5 months ago. Okay, that's
Yeah.
Thing about Willie Jones, here's the way I look at it. Right, look at Willie Jones compared with Don Money right above. They're both on the same side of the platoon. Essentially, the entire difference in those cards is 11 points of I, and that 11 points of I is costing you like 40,000 points.
well, that's Willie Jones's bad side.
Okay, fair enough.
Do you?
You know what?
Oh yeah,
Look up it.
You are
Look
I
up
have
it.
completely
Hojo. I
right.
have
You're
Hojo
completely
V right.
right, and Willie Jones is just that good. You know what? I think I must have put these in backward for you because that makes a lot more sense now.
So
Let me fix that.
if y'all remember the 79 Nolan Arenado from last year,
All right, that looks
that
better.
was it was I think Colorado's live card reward maybe. That's this Willie Jones card, right? The defense is crazy good for the level of the card, and the bat on its strong side is maybe the best bat in the format above, right? Like if you wanted, if there weren't equally ridiculous third baseman in gold, like I'd have a hard time arguing for Willie Jones over Toby Hara if you wanted to play him at third, for example.
Yeah.
But it's not like he couldn't play VL in gold. Like that bat is really stupid.
Yeah, no, you're right. I was looking at the wrong card when we did that, so I think you're completely right. With that said, I think it is worth pointing out the gap in WAR between the 100,000 point platoon you're running and the 1,000 point platoon I'm running isn't that big.
No, and I think when you
Look, we
start
didn't
talking
bring
about
Greg
like
on the show to shame him, all right?
no. I look any getting to you could have a fairly competitive silver team for I don't know under 50K. If you didn't want to spend that kind of stuff, but to optimize above and beyond that, and I know that sounds goofy because of course they're better cards, but to optimize above and beyond that, that's where the cost per war, however you want to scale the war, whatever, the cost is exponentially greater. So you're talking now 100K for half a win
Yeah.
or something like that.
Honest to goodness, I think the best way to go about it is to just play weeklies, right? Like
Also true.
you don't have to have the scariest team in the world to win 3 rounds in a weekly and walk away with a silver tournament edition card.
Yeah.
You really don't.
No, I threw together. I can't even remember what format it was. Earlier this year, I threw together something and won a Correa, and it was like I just kind of randomly threw it together. So that's
you just be persistent, especially the live tournaments. Like if you want to play silver as a format and you're not entering the live the 2 live weekly tournaments every week, you're doing yourself a disservice. Right? Like those are as close to just lottery tickets as it gets in as far as weekly tournaments goes, right? Because everyone has the same players.
yeah.
If you don't think
that's
you're
actually
good
true.
at building a team for the format, enter once, just go with whoever won last week. Just take their team. Just take the whole thing. Easy peasy.
There you
Yep.
go.
And don't let anyone shame you about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? This is how you learn.
No.
Oh,
There's
to be
just
clear, I don't think I'm not trying to shame him about it. If I could have bought a Hojo and a
Oh, I know,
Willie
I know,
Jones,
I know, I know.
I spent a
I
month
was,
looking for some of these cards.
I was teasing there, but yeah,
Yeah.
Unsung Heroes and Snapshots are both also incredibly accessible. There
But
are a
I do think
few.
of the two, I think Hojo is by far the better silver card. Willie Jones is a better gold card again because the lefties in the meta.
I would agree with that. It's
Um,
great. He's great, but only great for 20% of all innings pitched, or excuse me, 29%.
You absolutely don't need Gullickson for Snapshots.
I think you needed him a
Gullickson's
lot more when it was. The funny thing is, in the double elimination format, as much as that felt more random, I think that was when you really needed Gullickson because if you were in the winner's bracket, he's actually starting a third of your games.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
I never managed
You
to do well with
absolutely don't need
Gullickson.
Gullickson.
Um,
He's very much a nice to have for that format, but don't feel like you don't have Gullickson, so why bother, right? And again, you're just trying to win 3 rounds, right? Like if you go further than that, then sweet. Maybe you get something else that you can sell or use in another format or use on your perfect team. But if you're just trying to win like a Mike Trout or a Howard Johnson or a Ron Gant or right, like one of these prohibitively expensive silver tournament edition cards, your team just has to kind of be good enough.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like frankly,
exactly.
if you're spending the money on a Gullickson to try and win a Hojo, just buy the Hojo and be move on with your life.
Okay, so
Yeah.
right. Shortstop. I think we're now that we've got drops. I think we're going to set a record for stream length here. So
Well,
let's see. Last time we talked about shortstop, it was all Donnie Bush.
yep.
Al Dark's up there.
It's
Woody English is up there, but it was just all Donnie Bush. So where are we now? Um, so in the model, uh, yeah, really nothing's changed. Still Donnie Bush, still Al Dark. Now Woody English is kind of fun because the model thinks he's third best, and he's actually got a negative WAR in. It's pretty limited, but he's got a negative WAR in the observed data. And that WOBA is just dreadful. Actually, I can't understand why the WOBA is so dreadful, right? Because looking at the card, I don't see why it should be.
No, and that may just be an outlier. I have him as
bad luck.
decent in my data. Not necessarily bad. Not great either, but he's there to play defense. I have English to play defense, not because of his bat.
Yeah, no, but the bat shouldn't be that bad. It should be probably. I mean, it's clearly going to be worse than say Donnie Bush or something. But
Mr. Black, this is a family channel. I don't need to hear about your Bush Woody platoon.
Well, so here's the other theory that I have on why English is showing his negative WAR. If you look at his splits, he splits via left. Look at the pitching. I just think he's just getting the bad end of matchups, honestly.
could be. Let's
Because
see.
when I do
Others.
observe data, I bump it by like 5-10%, just because I know there's people out there playing dudes both ways or not being
Yeah,
economic with their outs. So
makes sense. Others that are up there in the model: Bud Harrelson, Kid Elberfeld, Howard Johnson comes in sixth. He's definitely better as a third baseman. But somehow the bat is so good that with his hold on, what is is that 45 defense at short? Let me see where that's coming from.
it is. Hojo has 45 at short.
It's a fully trained 45 at short. So it's not it's a fully trained 45 at short. But the bat's just so
I
good
have
he's
him
in the
in.
top 10.
Yeah, I have him backing up short in silver cap, only because I don't have anybody else to, not because
Yeah.
I want to. And he's okay. That format's a little bit. There's little looser tolerances with defense,
Yeah.
but these, yeah, silver
Well,
best of seven. I
he's
absolutely don't play him at short.
I mean, he's by far the best, the best bat eligible at short and silver. Correa, then Don Money, Scott Fletcher, the future legend Perdomo. So those are kind of the ones that would be on the fringes in the model. Okay, as for the observed data, um, Tony Batista in this huge defense with absolutely nothing for a bat is actually coming out on top. And I think this is again something where part of it is the way that OOTP is calculating WAR. So I don't think I quite believe this WAR number, but the defense is absolutely excellent.
Yeah, I
Not
don't. I do believe, as we've talked about earlier, I do believe that defense, at least in this case, has been like grossly overrepresented. Um, I don't know. I don't see this with any other card where you see a plus defender at the top there with a nothing bat.
Yeah, well, part of it. So this is why I was confused. So compare his bat with Woody English right above it, and there's just no way that Batista should have a higher WOBA. So there's something with the sample sizes in there as well.
Yeah, potentially.
Um, but yeah, Batista ends up at the top, and hey, he's also winning once every 13 and a half tournaments. So I guess whoever's running Batista is doing well. Let's see. Warbot says if you're going to platoon, then Bush and English are just fine, right? So as you pointed out, Woody English picks up 13 points of I if you're going to run him against lefties, which does make a pretty big difference, right? Also a few points of power. Let's see. But really, I think the point in all this is that Donnie Bush is just great, right? Donnie Bush is your biggest winner, not too surprisingly. And also he's really cheap. Again, like with Grantham, if you don't have a Donnie Bush yet, you're clearly either not listening to the stream or not going to be convinced. I mean, Donnie Bush actually even does all the fringy things, right? He's got a little bit of speed. He's a good base runner. 100 bunt for hit, 95 sack bunt. So he just does everything, right?
Good. Card's just good.
It's a great card. And you can have the Bush English platoon for like under 700 points. You can't beat it.
So what are we running? I'm just running Bush both ways because I've got Don Money available as a backup. And you are running that platoon, it looks like.
I sure am, yeah.
And I think the platoon's perfectly fine.
I had Correa early on. He's just not getting it done with the glove, in my opinion. I think that he's a little bit on the low side for infield range. His bat is great, especially if you right. But yeah, I just don't think the glove is there. It's not as heavy as it was last year. The reliance on defense, in my opinion, but it still does matter.
Yeah. Makes sense. Let's see. So should we do some outfielders?
Let's go.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. So left field, last time we talked about it, Ron Gant was up there, followed by a John Stone we just didn't have any data on at the time, and then Jelly. Right? And we noticed some people were playing Bob Bailey in left, and he was doing pretty well. So, all right, what do we got? Let's see. Well, Gant, for sure. We've got Hojo up there now, second in the model. I still think I like Hojo better as a third baseman than I do as a left fielder, but he can certainly play left. And this Josh Reddick is a new card, and maybe one that's worth taking a look at. So I don't know if you two have had a chance to look at that Reddick yet.
I have not, but it looks nice.
Here, I can put up
No,
his
I haven't seen it
splits.
yet.
Here, let me
Okay.
put up his splits for you. So, definitely prefers to be a platoon bat. I think you can get away with platooning left, though.
Mm. And I mean, even if you had to let that ride, that's not terrible. That B left bat.
No, I think it's playable for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's playable if you had to. Uh, this Reddit card's also eligible. I'm just checking, but I think it's at least left and right, if I remember correctly. And I think he even grades out a little bit better. Yeah, we're going to talk about him again because he grades out even a little bit better as a right fielder than he does as a left fielder. So eligible multiple positions. Just looking. Yeah, fully trained in right, not quite fully trained in left. Not a ton of range though. So you're really looking at Reddick much more as a bat if you're going to run him. Um, let's see. After that, Jelly Gardner now fourth, Chick Stahl, Lloyd Mosby. So a bunch of center fielders eligible multiple positions. Another card that we haven't really seen is this Don Baylor. I can put him up as well. Oops. So Baylor also maybe a bit of a platoon bat, but probably can play on the weak side. I just don't think it's quite a good enough bat compared with some of the others, but maybe it's a good silver floor cap. I mean, what do you think?
Uh, yeah. I mean, that B left split's not bad. Um, no, I mean, I think that's perfectly playable.
So there's actually a couple. So the other new, I think it's a new, yeah, the other new 73 overall left fielder here. There's also a Bob Johnson coming out, which Warbot again,
I
like with Baylor, doesn't quite rate this card as highly as sort of the top five or so left fielders, but maybe is more playable as a cap option.
Yeah, I mean, I really like this card for cap play. It looks like fairly even splits. I'm not seeing anything. I mean, the power a little bit, but okay. Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty even down the middle, which is something that's huge for cap cards. Um, and I'll be honest with you, left field is kind of a wild card, at least in silver cap. Like, I've got a revolving door of left fielders that come and go. So I would actually like to check this card out
Yeah, I think one thing that's
as a
dangerous with
cap
Bob
piece.
Johnson is he is somehow a fully trained 25 in center field.
Ooh.
Mm.
So you got to be really careful to make sure that your AI manager is not going to decide that he can sort of pinch hit and then end up playing center late in the game.
I'm not sure if does the force position, does that cover the late game pinch hitting contingency or
I
no?
haven't had a lot of success with it. It might be that I'm using the sliders wrong.
I don't know. Manager Jim Smith just kind of does what he wants. I just make suggestions.
So Baylor and Johnson, both are interesting cards that are in our top 10 in left field, but even at release don't look like they play immediately. So I don't think they're really going to play in Silver Best of 7 at this point because you can just get cheaper cards that are going to do a bit better. But at least worth looking at, I'd say. All right, so what about the data? So, well, that's interesting. Gant's up there, Mosby's up there. We talked about Mosby would have been there in the model if not for Reddick. Bernard Gilkey is kind of interesting. And again, it seems like that's being driven. The bats may be okay, not a lot of eye, but I think that's again being driven by this defense, right?
Yeah.
Which I just kind of find it interesting just because left field's typically, I don't know, not defensively, to
Yeah.
me, not
Or
worth
no, you
like
know
where you
what?
would
Hold
get it
on. No,
at short
Gilkey
or
and yeah, Gilkey and the observed data actually has essentially the same WOBA as Gant.
really.
That's what it's showing.
That's interesting
Um,
because anecdotally, I know quite a few people with Gant. I say quite a few, probably like I don't know, 3 or 4, and I've heard nothing but in the data, he shows excellent. I've heard great things about that card. That has to be another one of those like 40,000 point luxury pieces.
yeah.
I think you can do without, but he's that guy that you need to go for that like that last like .2 war to put you over the edge or whatever.
So I think Gant's been one of my best
Oh
purchases because he
Jesus,
just plays in
80.
sort of every format. The thing is, Gant really does need to be a platoon bat if at all possible, whereas Gilkey's two-sided. So I think maybe that's where it's coming from. Is just people are running Gant both ways.
Yeah, and I think like we talked about before, in aggregated, just observed data, like you have to assume that a certain uh, percentage of all appearances are going to be with like suboptimal conditions. So it's not necessarily representative of the card. That's why, like I said earlier, I do the
Yeah,
little bump at 5-10%.
right. Whereas Gilkey's probably flatter. Um, yeah, Gilkey ends up just absolutely nowhere close in the model. But it is a small sample, and yeah, I can't see Gilkey having this kind of WOBA be sustainable. Like I also like if you compare him to Lloyd Mosby down there, I would think that Gilkey bat should be worse than Mosby as well, right? It's a few points of power for 12 points of I, essentially.
Yeah, and in the current meta, I mean, I take I every time. Power is okay.
Yeah,
Like I said, it's starting to play up, but it's not pound for pound the same, in my opinion.
yeah. So I was more convinced that Kel could turn out to be good if there were something weird about the way the defense is being evaluated. I'm really convinced that with more data, Gilkey will go away here.
Yeah, I think there's a
Maybe,
lot of really interesting options at left. Certainly,
maybe we'll
these were
find
the
out in a
top.
couple months.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. All right. Let's see. If you're going to run a platoon, by the way, Gant clearly makes sense on one side, and Warbot actually likes running Jelly Gardner on the other side. Even though he's got no power, the eye's great, and the defense isn't great, but sort of passable enough for left field, is kind of what it's saying. I mean, well, basically you show Warbot a card with a 98 eye, and it's going to find a way to get in the lineup somewhere, right?
Mm,
That sounds
yep.
like Warbot to me.
Um, I was going to say I like Jelly better as a center fielder, but actually, given how stacked center field is compared with left, maybe he is better as a left fielder.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, defensively at center field, you don't have to have that S tier defense, but I just don't know that Jelly cuts it with some of the other options.
Let's see. Your biggest winner here, well, this one's kind of all over the map in terms of what's there. Apparently, your biggest winner is actually Greg Luzinski.
Which
And
is funny because that's exactly the card I was about to bring up. Between that one and Woodling, two very obtainable options at left.
You're just biased because his name's Greg.
That's true. Yeah,
I love that Luzinski
Greg's of the
card,
world
but
unite.
as much as there are things that I will do with atrocious defense, I've just got to play him at DH if I'm playing him.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. I first became aware that both of those cards, Woodling and Luzinski, is they're cap monsters. I don't need them to play defense. I just need them to mash the heck out of the ball,
Especially in
and they
cap
do
where you
that.
can
They do
feast
that
on
great.
bad pitching.
Correct. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's see. So shoestring budget, I think some of the left fielders we've talked about are going to be expensive. Gant's expensive. Hojo's expensive. Reddick, I assume, will be expensive. But a handful of these aren't. And, maybe one good option is just this is a good place to pick up Jelly Gardner. I think we also could have put a pitch in for Mosby here. He's also excellent at multiple positions and easy to get. So, all right, what's everybody running?
I have a soft spot for Mosby.
So this is probably going to be the most contentious. I run a very unconventional left field.
That's interesting. So I'm just listening to Warbot here. Gant's wonderful. The reason I'm running Jelly is really because I want him to be able to play a bunch of positions, and so this is kind of where I fit him in. But I'm playing Gant half the time against righties as well. And you're running Grantham and Kruk.
Yeah, so let me explain myself. So Grantham be right. That's one of those bats that you just have to try to get him in with that eye, because he splits be right. And both of these guys are the dust at the bottom of the Cheerios. Like this is where it settled, and I needed left. I cut some space in left field, so. This is how it. If you'll notice, well, I don't know if you have my depth chart. I also have Grantham backing up second, first. In different situations, etc. There's just a lot of flexibility there, and like I said earlier, Kruk. This is Kruk's weak side or Kruk's weak split. But it looks bad because his strong split is so good.
Yeah.
But he's perfectly fine in left.
I mean, I don't know. I have vivid memories as a kid of Kruk facing a lefty in the All-Star game.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's well, thank God we don't have any Randy Johnsons to or do we? Don't we have a silver Randy Johnson?
What year is this Kruk? Is it before or after the surgery?
Oh, that's
it's saying 93. 1993 Kruk.
So that's a pretty good Kruk.
Yeah. I love that card.
Although it's not listed as a peak Kruk, so we could get a better one.
That wouldn't shock me. But
yeah, I think it's the
Burrell's
an interesting option.
This is the spare parts.
Yeah,
that was pre-surgery.
Yeah. So Burrell
at the height of his powers.
Yeah. So let's see. So you mentioned Pat Burrell. The model doesn't like him in left again because of the defense, but the model does have him as the sixth best option at DH. So I think that's where I see him, and really Luzinski also I think works out better as a DH. The bat in both cases is good enough to play there. But you can stick one of them in left. I mean, we had this same discussion in gold with Hack Wilson, right? Are you willing to stick him in center because the bat's just that good? Maybe you are if you have two, if you have two that are good enough. But I think they're DHs.
That's fair. I mean, Burrell's he's showing very well in silver cap as well. So an option in left, he's one of probably about half a dozen that are very, very playable in the cap format.
See, I really like cards like that in cap even more because in cap formats, anyone that just walks a lot is seeing a lot of pitches. It's running through their bullpen, and as soon as you get into the bullpen, you usually, just start being able to hit. So I think the eye plays up that much more.
He has such a unique shape to. Well, I guess. I mean, it's all eye and power. Well, no, I guess his gap power is pretty decent too.
Well,
then I take all that back.
We'll talk about this more with DH,
an awesome power guy. Okay.
Let's Let's see, other left fielders. I think that probably covers them, and half of these really are center fielders or right fielders. Um, so yeah, as for center, so the last time we talked, we had a long discussion about this Trout card. The model loves it, and we just couldn't tolerate the defense. So little bit further along, let's see where we're at.
Card continues to be good and awkward.
The model's telling
And
you the
I hate
same
it.
thing. It basically
Yep.
gives you the same choice, and I think this is again one of these things where, yeah, the card's good. If I'm going to play him, I'd really rather play him at DH again. I
Yep.
just can't deal with the defense, but the model just kind of calmly says, yeah, but there aren't a lot of center field bats, and he's got a bat. And he definitely has a bat.
It's true.
Yeah, and so I think the important thing too to kind of note, and not to jump too far ahead, but I DH Trout V right, and I have him starting V left. I feel like I'm really minimizing his exposure with only 29% of all the innings coming against left-handed pitching. So in terms of getting him on the field, that's what I mean by exposure. So I don't I hate this Trout card, but I have to play it. So
So Mr. Black kind of raises an interesting idea that the defense, maybe the defense is kind of lower variance. And so maybe you get a little bit higher WAR overall, but if you're trying to get packs, maybe you want the high variance thing, which is the hitting. I'm not sure I think that's true. I mean, I think I just in general, I'm trying to pick roughly the highest WAR team and just sort of hope that on average I'm winning more games. But do you give more thought to variance when you're kind of picking a roster for quicks?
I do. There's certainly some cards that we've talked about that, I feel comfortable playing in certain positions where other people might not, and vice versa. Um, I don't think it's quite like Caps where it's bend don't break. That kind of style of defense. I think it does matter, but I don't think it matters like last year where there was a good portion of Silver the game cycle last year where I ran defense first team. So I guess this year, like I've kind of found this Goldilocks zone that's, maybe not the best defensive option, maybe not the best offensive option. Somewhere kind of like I look at it as it's a net sum, right? Like you have to figure the push and pull of offense and defense. So I certainly do, and I have a metric that I use to like calculate net runs or net worth. So
That makes sense. Let's see. As for the observed data, where are we at? So the observed data, not a fan of Trout, and again we see a couple interesting names here. So if we go a little further down the list in the model, actually there are a couple cards we should talk about further down the list, but maybe let's talk about the observed data first, and then we'll show a couple of these.
okay.
So yeah, Bill Bruton is. I don't think that's a card I've ever looked at, honestly. And
Crouton the Crouton. I haven't seen that card either.
I have not either.
Plays
yeah,
good
that doesn't
defense,
show
though,
up
apparently.
anywhere in these screens, but it's clearly putting up numbers. So maybe it's worth taking a closer look. Yeah, Lofton, yeah, winning one out of every 9.4 tournaments. Maybe there aren't a lot of copies of him, but that's still a really solid card. Lloyd Mosby up there. So yeah, if we went further down the list in the center field, by the way, let's see, Mosby comes out sixth on the list, and Ashburn eighth in the model. I'm just trying to pull up Bruton to see exactly where that's coming from. Okay, yeah, so only eligible at center, but 87 range, 88 error, 88 arm, and 87 defense total.
And just kind of by eyeball, like the V right isn't terrible. It's not great. I don't know if that glove makes up for it, but that's not an unplayable bat. V right for Bill Bruton.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. The card I actually want to talk about here, though, is a new card. Because the card that's now fourth in the model, just behind Jelly, and really
Is it
close.
is it Adam Jones?
It is. It's this Adam Jones.
Yeah, buddy.
Let me put him up.
Let me once again, as I surprisingly often have occasion to do, put my unrepentant Orioles fan hat on. This card is the best card in the game. Adam Jones is amazing, and we should all be sad that we don't have one yet.
See, I would put my unrepentant Red Sox hat on, except the good Red Sox players don't play silver.
Oof. Yeah, they're all in bronze. Okay. I know. No, I really like the look of this Adam Jones card.
He definitely wasn't a lifelong.
Adam Jones came up as a Mariner.
Did he come over? Did he come over in the Eric Bedard trade?
I'm trying to remember what the trade was, but he came up
as I believe it was
Seattle prospect.
It was about 07.
Yeah, Seattle prospect for a couple of years. Let me see if I can find which trade he came over in.
It was in the Bedard trade. Adam Jones and 4 pitchers. Who were the 4 pitchers? George Sherrill, Chris Tillman, Cam McColio, and Tony Butler. So basically Bedard for Adam Jones.
Might have worked out okay.
Well, yeah.
Or
Tillman
let me see if I can channel Chris here.
For a little bit.
Bedard. Bedard. There we go. That was a good one.
Let's see. Yeah. So looking at this Adam Jones, 102 defense in center, which has a 95 range, 120 in right, because that throws in the 104 arm, and the bat is absolutely playable. You know, it's not as good a bat. That is the
kindest thing I would say about it, but it is. Yep.
Yeah.
It's massively adequate.
If he had any little bit of eye, this would be by far the best outfielder in silver, and he just doesn't.
Which is good because if he had eye, he'd be a gold.
That's true. That's true. I don't know. He's 73.
If he had eye, then he's a better card than the 90 Kiermaier.
Yeah, that's probably true. Except he bats right-handed, which does matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, but this card is nuts. Like the best center field defense in silver by a mile.
And the best right field defense, I think, possibly in the game at the moment.
That's possible, yeah. And he's a 73, right? This card will play in cap tournaments. The bat may not play up, but the glove certainly does.
Yeah.
This definitely plays in silver cap.
So, I think
it plays in silver cap. It might play in open cap, honestly, just like as a center fielder.
And in really high caps, I think this plays as a defensive replacement too.
Yeah, well, and it's a 73 that you're perfectly you may not be thrilled starting him every day, but you're not mad about it either.
Yeah. Let's see. Ashburn, by the way, the model has 8th. So after Mosby, Vince DiMaggio, the build-a lineup Ashburn, Melvin, Upton, and Kenny Lofton.
He's still BJ Upton. I can't.
Yep.
I have feelings.
Yeah. But yeah,
he was
Jones
Melvin
card,
for like 2 years, and then it was just like, no, Melvin is a dumb name. I'm Bossman Jr. again.
Yeah.
To be fair, that's a pretty awesome name.
Dude, if I could go through life being called Bossman Jr.,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would just settle for Bossman, really.
Well, sure, but Bossman was clearly his dad, so...
That's Mr. Bossman.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's actually Bossman of the Staten Island Bossmans.
But yeah, Adam Jones, So the model still has him behind these top three because of the bat and kind of narrowly behind Jelly. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to be
Sure.
looking to play that card even in silver best of sevens, just as a defensive replacement and a two-position backup. Let's see. Right, if you're going to run a platoon, then again, Jelly kind of works as the strong side. And that's the other thing with Trout is, he is a righty. You would prefer, he's not that splitty, but to the extent he is, he is a righty, so he's playing the weak side of the platoon. Let's see. Where are we at? Biggest winner? So actually, that's Kenny Lofton on just over a third of the builds that we saw
Okay.
win. I guess when you're winning over 10% of the time, you're going to do pretty well, right?
I think probably what's going on here is there's someone that has every card, and they're running Kenny Lofton to be a hipster, and not because he's good.
So they basically have every card, but they also agree that Trout's not a center fielder.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked at this Lofton card. I just can't. Like, I am dumb with my points, and I can't bring myself to buy that card.
No, it's just
I won one at some point, and I don't play it anywhere.
it's basically got the Tony Gwynn shape of this card has big numbers and looks
Yeah.
exciting in blue and just can't hit.
Yeah.
But the numbers say
That's
he's hitting, so you know. Right, budget options.
Can't argue with the numbers.
Definitely
Again,
not Kenny Lofton.
no, but really, again, we could have gone Gardner, we could have gone Mosby. I think we'll highlight McTammany here because that's another cheap card that's worth looking at.
I love McTammany.
McTammany is great.
For all of the same reasons that I love Adam Jones, except now I love Adam Jones more. Sorry, Jim.
Well, there's one big difference between McTammany and Adam Jones, which is McTammany.
Is it like 50 points of I?
Which is McTammany played for Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
No, but actually there is one other big difference, which is so the range is pretty similar in outfield, but Adam Jones is fully trained in center and right. McTammany is fully trained in center, but only 52 out of 100 in right.
Sure.
And that is a big difference if you're kind of looking to squeeze them into a build.
And also 50 points of I.
And 50 points of I. Yeah. The bats aren't really that close, but I think I'm going to be running Adam Jones a lot as soon as I can get my hands on one.
If and when I get one, I am right there with you.
What am I doing now, though? Right now, I'm just running McTammany. He's perfectly fine. He plays both ways.
His name's
he's got
Jim.
a great eye both ways. And you, as you mentioned, are actually playing that Trout, right?
Yeah, so he DHs V right, which arguably is his better side. It doesn't look like it on the card.
He does have some slight reverse splits. And I will say in Greg's defense that if you are going to run Mike Trout in center field, this is an excellent way to do it. Where he's basically sort of like resting Chick Stahl, who is a very good center fielder, on his weak side.
Let me just paraphrase what you just said. What you're saying is if you're going to run Mike Trout in center, the best way to do it is run him as little as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, minimizes exposure, which means minimizes play.
Right?
Minimizes innings play.
Get his bat in the lineup as much as you can, and his glove in the lineup as little as you can get away with.
Yep.
Pretty much.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's really funny looking at the model. The model has, that can't be right, 82 points of WOBA difference between Trout and Adam Jones.
I'm willing to believe that. Jones's bat is like aggressively mediocre.
But only like half a WAR per 600 plate appearances because the glove is so much better.
I'm also willing to believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great.
Bad. In the field, Trout is bad.
And that Chick Stahl card, right? So he ends up right behind Adam Jones in the model. and you're platooning him, but he's also a bat that doesn't really need to be platooned.
No, he doesn't. So let me check my. Pull it
Just
up
a
real
quick
quick.
note on that. Chick Stahl makes the short list of not particularly splitty good left-handed players,
Yeah,
which is in my mind what makes him so useful, right? Like he's a good, but or he's more okay defensively in center field, right? He's not great, and his bat is like pretty above average, but not like crazy. Um, that
that's what I'm
said,
seeing. Yeah,
he's not splitty at all.
Yeah.
And finding left-handed batters that don't just fold to left-handed pitching is pretty hard this year.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
true. I think most of them end up being the switch hitters instead.
Yep.
Um, I was looking at
I,
this again, actually, and the fact that all of these really are poor defensive center fielders, I think that's why Bill Bruton's doing so well, is because by comparison, that defense is immense, right?
Yeah, that's
You know,
fair.
that 87 defense suddenly turns into like a peak Willie Mays defensively or something, compared with like
Sure.
running Trout out there.
I would still rather run McTammany, but I can
Me
see the
too.
logic behind.
Um,
I can see the logic behind running Bruton for sure. Right. I
and I,
think the war is a little inflated. Like I think that's a small sample size war and would come down a bit in the long run. But
yeah, I think so.
card looks fine.
Um, let's see. As for right, where you can also run Adam Jones, and actually, I'm trying to remember how many people were above 120 even at the end of last cycle, like in 22, in right
In terms
field.
of
Just right.
gosh, I
There
don't
weren't a
know.
lot, right? Was it maybe the
probably
Oh, so
Clemente?
Clemente.
Maybe the Clemente
Yeah,
was.
part of that is that there weren't a lot of center fielders that were fully trained in right field.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Like even this year, some of like I don't remember what Cool Papa Bell trains to in the corners, but it's a pretty big number in left field.
Cool Papa comes full in left field. He's 121, but in right he's 109 fully trained, like comes fully trained.
Sounds right.
All right, so right field. Last time we talked about it, it was Baines, a Paul O'Neill card that didn't exist, and then an expensive Pete
It wasn't
Rose.
just us. It wasn't just us. It
No,
actually didn't
it
exist.
actually didn't exist.
no, I think there are what 8 of them now in the wild.
It's not a lot.
Some small number, yeah.
There was one tournament I believe so far, and it was only it was the prize for whatever 9
There was
9 to
one
16,
tournament,
yeah.
and it was an Iron Warriors, so it was wide open. You had to win 4 rounds to get yourself an O'Neill. I have a friend that I actually just introduced to the game. Just got out of rookie league, his first week essentially. Got himself to the 5th round, and I was trying to explain to him, you might be happy if you get this O'Neill. Won one more round and got a Tom Gorman instead. Although that's playing on
man.
although that is playing on his league roster now. So
Got it. Yeah.
Anything would be my heart.
let's see, Bruton, you're asking. It's 88 arm. It's actually pretty flat. 87 range, 88 error, 88 arm. All right. Let's see.
Shortstop.
Yeah. Let's see. Right. So right field. Hold on. That's clearly a typo. Let me fix that typo. All right. So now in right field, we've again got Harold Baines, followed by a Paul O'Neill that still really doesn't exist, and a Josh Reddick who, also doesn't really exist. But Harold Baines is good.
Now we could in good confidence say, yet.
Indeed.
Right. They're coming.
And I'm hoping that Paul O'Neill is not one of the ones taken out of the rotation for the second set.
He won't be. They went out of their way. I think Nico actually came out and said that neither of the O'Neills is being rotated out for reasons that should be apparent.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I think I think both of them are cards that are good enough that even with a little bit stronger set of tournament cards, they might be useful.
I don't know about Tip O'Neill, but I think Paul O'Neill certainly is.
Yeah, I think you at least want to be able to play with him. I think Tip O'Neill has a funny shape, so in some of these dead ball formats, he might end up being really good, but I don't think he's going to play an open.
Okay, that's fair.
Let's see, some other right fielders to mention. So the one that comes in fourth is also a card that I haven't seen before. Let me put up Nick Swisher. So another non-existent option, but again soon to exist. The split's kind of funny, right? He's got 18 more points of power versus right and 19 more points of eye versus left. Which is kind of a funny combination, right?
Huh. Yeah, I'm not familiar with this card, so I just pulled it up. It's very weird. It seems like you get a little bit more three true outcome kind of feel out of the V right side, and then like I don't know, it's just a completely different shape on the left. I don't know that I've ever seen a card this wacky.
No, it's a really interesting card. Switch hitter, eligible at first base in all three outfield positions. So the model likes him best at right because the defense maybe isn't so good at center, and he's not fully trained in left. So he probably should be a right fielder, if at all possible, but it's kind of a fun card. So he ends up fourth in the model. Then Mosby, Jelly Gardner, Chickstall, Don Baylor, who we talked about, Kruk, right? We talked about Kruk in left, but Kruk can also play right. And then the limited edition Bing Miller still ends up in the top 10, although I think there's some better options there.
Yeah, I had Bing in the lineup for like since he came out. I just dropped him probably a week or two ago. I think he's kind of getting stale. I think there's some better options, like you were alluding to, but I don't know, Charles, your take?
Yeah, well, Bing's just the kind of card I never really liked because he doesn't get on base enough.
I was shocked at how effective Bing was. Like, I bought one because it was cheap and I wanted to mess around with it, and I was shocked at how effective that card was while it was still. I hesitate to say good, but like it lined up well against what was going on.
When it played, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so Mr. Black, that is true. Mickey Tettleton is fully trained in right field. He is fully trained in right field. And ironically enough, in a way that is perfectly befitting a platinum card from the quote-unquote defense era. But you probably don't want to play him. Yeah, so you're right though. But you're right that all these cards don't exist, LCats. So yeah, Harold Baines. Well, the card exists, but you really can't buy one at this point. O'Neill and Reddick actually haven't existed. Swisher doesn't exist. So yeah, then you're back to Mosby, Jelly Gardner, and some of these tournament editions again.
I like Mosby a lot. I continue to really like Mosby.
Mosby's good.
Let's see.
I'm trying to think of like budget options, budget options, and right.
Let's see. So the observed data does in fact only consist of people that exist. So Bain's a pretty clear number one. Chickstall up there. We talked about him maybe as being better in center, but you can run him in right. I really don't like the shape of this Pete Rose card, but I mean, I guess maybe the bat's good enough to be playable.
I guess. I've never liked him, and he's always overperformed my expectations. I also like Darryl Strawberry. I like him as a DH.
I think Strawberry is a better DH, but also really more of a platoon bat, I'd say. Although a lot of these guys
Also
are.
very much a platoon bat, yes.
I mean, it's actually kind of funny that there are really no right-handed right fielders in the meta, right? Big Miller is probably the best right-handed option here. Switcher's now going to be a switch hitter,
Uh,
and Don Baylor, I guess you could stick in right.
yeah, there's some non-primary right fielders that work fine.
You stick McTammany in right, maybe. Um,
Yeah, that's the one that comes to mind, actually.
I'm still tempted if you don't have any of these expensive cards. I'd still be tempted to just stick Adam Jones there for the defense, but
Well, let's not say that before we know whether or not Adam Jones is an expensive card.
that's true.
Adam Jones is terrible.
Correct.
You got an Adam
Adam
Jones.
Jones is terrible. Please sell me your first one for 8K. But after
The only
that,
reason
let's talk Adam Jones.
the only reason I want Adam Jones is that I remain an Orioles fan.
Oh, he's great.
The only reason I want Adam Jones is to play him in center and right.
There you go.
Let's see. All right, if you're going to platoon, Baines is really, ideally a platoon bat, although the defense is good enough. You can play him both ways. This Don Baylor card, the bat is just
sure.
so good that if you're willing to put up with that defense,
If you're willing to punt a corner outfield spot, which if you're going to punt a defensive position, you could do a lot worse than right field.
yeah. I mean, that was always the way it worked in Little League, right?
Kinda, yeah.
Baines is just a great card, and I think there have really only been maybe about 3 of these limited editions that really end up being must-have for their formats, and I think Baines is still one of them. I think that, Griffey, and then probably Kuzman are the 3 that I'd really like to have, and kind of everything else is negotiable, maybe. I don't know. Are there others on your
Yeah.
list?
I have so many of them. In terms of just like being competitive, those 3 are a good list. The Gold McGriff is excellent. The Gold Abreu is also excellent. I don't think either of those are strictly speaking like necessary to compete because there are other perfectly good options, but they're both quite good. I think the jury is out on the Iron Babe Ruth. I am afraid that I'm going to land on, that card's important also, which
I still don't.
I would not
still
be
don't
happy
think
with.
it is. I still think.
I want to believe it's not.
I still think
but
Salkeld's a better bat, and you can't DH both of them. But
but
we'll see.
like Babe Ruth pitches just well enough that it does some roll compression things for you that you can't get otherwise.
I guess Rocky Colavito is probably another one that I like a lot. I find
the Carl shout out is well placed. Colavito's awesome, especially in caps. Like anytime I go to build a cap where like a high cap, and I'm comparing most like mid to low diamond corner outfielders to Colavito, it's just like, how is this card an 82? I don't understand.
I mean, I find I'm squeezing Colavito into every build I can. I'm squeezing Hubble into a lot of builds, but I'd say both of them are a lot more skippable in terms of like what your next best option is. Whereas someone like Baines, just there isn't another option that's close. Griffey, I'm still running Griffey in Perfect League at this point as my starter both ways.
Griffey's real good.
I don't have a Kuzman, but if I did, he'd be a key to my roster.
Kuzman's phenomenal. I can vouch for that.
You opened 2 Colavitos. That's
Terry Turner is super cool. And I think he's actually like sneaky important for certain formats, but those are going to be infrequent enough that not having him isn't going to be like some huge loss for most people.
Yeah. Tommy John was someone I was playing in every build for a while that I think has now been surpassed at low diamond.
He's fallen off a bit for sure.
I mean, there were a few that I definitely like, but I think I think most of them are kind of in a
A
good
comp-
spot where they're potentially skippable, but give you an interesting option that's kind of fun to have. And I think that's a really good combination for a limited edition card.
yeah, like the whole spate of gold pitchers outside of the one that's unplayable, whose name I can't remember. Uh,
I pulled a Carlton, and I just
yeah,
never
that
bothered.
one.
I just never bothered selling him because I don't think I would have gotten
That one.
anything.
He's worth like 8K or something stupid. But like come on, brain. Mathewson and
The
Waddell
Mathewson didn't
are
quite
both really
play.
neat.
The Dempster didn't quite play, I guess.
Oh no, the Mathewson plays for sure. Uh,
This year?
the Dempster plays situationally. Like he's a very very splitty pitcher. So
Yeah.
like in the right environment, he's awesome. Um, I think the Waddell also probably plays in gold.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say like, man, Rube Waddell had a silver card. I was
No,
like,
no, no,
man, I
no, no.
am for sure
These are
not cracking that.
the gold elite pitchers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, how many packs did you open to get 2 Calavitos? Because that's some pretty good pack luck.
And then I have some like fun ones that are actively kind of bad, like Oyster Burns.
I really
Um,
wanted Oyster Burns to be good.
I'm almost definitely playing him in the PTCS this weekend, but that's like 10,000% just to be a hipster, right? Like I I don't care that this is just like incorrect. He's too cool to not play, so here we go.
Yeah, several of these I just don't quite understand. So like the kind of thing that's puzzling to me, this Keith Hernandez card looks like he would have been
Hernandez
absolutely
is so
incredible
cool,
before the Build a Legend, before the Build a Lineup Perfects came out.
but coming out on the same day as that McCovey is kind of a kick in the teeth. Yeah,
Yeah, because I would have loved to try to get him and play him, but he just does exactly the same thing as McCovey does, but not quite as well. But if you're going to be able to pay 250,000 for a Keith Hernandez, you also have McCovey.
yeah. I would like an alternate universe Keith Hernandez where he plays shortstop.
Could be fun.
Just like
Um,
with the same rating. I don't need you to change his defensive ratings at all. Just make him eligible at shortstop. Right? I forget what year, because I wasn't playing
yeah.
then, but there was a year when you could just like train anyone anywhere in PT.
Well, with 102 infield range, 44 turn double play, that would be an interesting shortstop. Uh,
Yeah,
I
and I
agree.
want it, but I can't have it.
Um, so, right. Anyway, right. Let's see. Biggest winner in right field, Pete Rose, apparently. I guess just because all these top cards sort of don't really exist, and so everyone's running different stuff.
Yeah, that has to be like very narrowly over Chickstall.
Yeah, it's got to be close. All right,
He
and
probably
then
cheated.
let's see if we want to find a budget option. Well, that's going to be tough because most of these cards don't exist. But maybe this is a good point to just put in a plug for Lloyd Mosby. Again, we could have mentioned him in left or center, but
Yep.
you're doing pretty well with Mosby too. And if you
Yeah.
run an outfield of like
If
Gardner, McCamney, and Mosby, you're not going to be too far behind someone that has every card in the game.
if you're just getting started in silver and like you want to grow into the format, Mosby is the exact sort of card that you should be building your team around.
Yeah.
Right? Cheap, plays like competitively with the good cards, the good cards with the overly expensive cards. Yeah, it's like I say that as though Mosby's not perfectly good.
Yeah.
Um, very flexible, so like you can be a little bit more pragmatic with buying upgrades because like okay, well if you happen to get an inexpensive Pete Rose, you can play Lloyd Mosby in left now instead of right where you were playing him or whatever, right? Like this is just the exact sort of
Yeah.
card you want to be looking to build your team around.
Let's see. Vince DiMaggio, we had 7th in center in the model. So the thing is, there's so few
If you can-
righties that this is also why Adam Jones is a card I'm so excited about. I just want a few right-handed outfielders to mix into the meta, and especially ones that can play multiple positions. So even though Jones doesn't have much of a bat, just the fact that he's a right-handed outfielder that I can credibly play makes me excited to have him in the meta. But I think that's the card I most want to see in Platinum 2. I want to see some kind of right-handed outfielder.
I want to see left-handed starting pitching.
Actually, yeah, you know what?
That's
probably
my number one request.
I think that's actually my biggest regret so far in terms of like recent releases. Is Joe Vosmick? I really wish he were 79 instead of 80.
Yeah.
I think that would have worked really well. Let's see. So what are we actually running here? So since all these other cards don't exist, I'm just running Harold Baines both ways. You can see that there is a pretty big split here. So I'm not doing great running him on his weak side, but the glove obviously plays as on both sides of the platoon, and I'm just kind of deciding that's something I can get away with.
His weak side's only 30% of the time, so
yeah, I think that's right.
It's much easier to live with like lefties with slightly dubious VL splits.
And Greg, you're playing stall, I guess, on the other side just to finish the. So you're effectively really platooning Baines with Trout, I guess.
Kinda. Yeah. So this is I played Trout and Stall in center, and then Baines and Stall in right. So yeah, I have this kind of weird outfield soup going on where like everybody plays a little bit of, I don't know. There's a lot of crossover in my lineup. So I love that Stall card, and that's kind of like I said, the dust and the Cheerios where he fell.
Makes sense. So, okay. Right. Let's move on to some DHs. So, I guess last time Eddie Yost was kind of up there. Roy Cullenbine, Pat Burrell. This is where Darryl Strawberry ends up. Kind of up there. So, a few new releases in the interim. And now the model really likes this Greg Luzinski bat. Maybe it's still better as a platoon bat, but it's just such a good bat that you do want to find a way to get him in the lineup, I think. Right?
Yeah, and I mean honestly, the V right split, which is his weak side, isn't terrible. The only difference really is the I, and he's missing about, I don't know what it is, 17 I, V left, V right. Favors V left. So I think he's okay in a pinch to play V right. Like, you could platoon him if he takes the left, but I don't think you're going to have that option at DH in Silver. I don't know. I guess it depends on your bullpen. I don't want to jump ahead, but depends on your bullpen makeup.
Makes sense. And I really like this Eddie Yost card for the same reason I always like cards like this. The eye is just incredible. Let's see. Observe data. So this is who people are actually playing at DH. So, for example, Kruk, I think we were thinking about more as a first baseman. But this is based on, what people are actually doing. So Hojo, Kruk, we talked about both of those. Sammy Sosa, I'm guessing that's a platoon bat there. Because I wouldn't expect that to work both sides.
Yeah, and it's weird that I think it's just because he's a mission card, but so he's just out there. But to me, that's a vestige of that old like power meta from the early game cycle.
I think that's going to go away.
Yeah.
And there are a few others in here that are worth mentioning. Bob Bailey would be great. Pat Burrell's a card that I think is worth looking at here. You can even run someone like Kettleton. The bat's probably good enough that you could get away with that if you had to. DH him and let him be a backup catcher if you wanted to run a more defensive catcher. I think that's something I'd even consider if, say, a really good defensive catcher comes out in Platinum 2 or in the dead ball stuff tonight. I think I might consider them letting Kettleton be a backup both ways and DH on his off days or something like that.
I'm telling you, we're going to get like a 78 Fred Carroll that's going to blow up the whole metagame.
I kind of want to see like a peak Austin Hedges.
We're going to have to fall all over ourselves to get it for the tournament on Saturday.
I could see that.
I really,
Exactly
really,
what we all
really
wanted to
wanted
spend tonight doing.
I really, really, really wanted a playable Jose Bautista card, or I think the one that they released this year was a little. I mean, it's a silver, so
Yeah.
but it's.
I could see it.
I want one that actually kind of plays.
You want a big old perfect like peak Joey Bats?
Yeah.
If they had a bat flipping rating though.
I was gonna say the photo of it should be, even if it's the the animated whatever the illustrated cards.
It should,
like
it should just be like a
illustrated
chalk outline of a bat flip.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, I would love a Ruben Sierra. So I grew up a Texas Rangers fan. I would love a 79 Ruben Sierra.
Yeah.
Wino in the chat.
Let me see. Let's see. All right, if you're gonna run a platoon, then Bailey lefties is. I mean, just look at that and realize it's a silver card, right? And then I think the other way, this is just another plug for Josh Reddick. I think this is going to be a really useful piece when he comes out, especially if you don't have some of these other tournament edition cards already.
I absolutely agree. And just the standard disclaimer: this is in fact the 75 Bob Bailey, not the 74 Bob Bailey.
True.
The 74 Bob Bailey is.
But the 74 Bob Bailey is shortly going to be gone from PAX, right? So,
and is less splitty.
So
I'm not sure he's useless, but
soon you're going to be able to get rid of the disclaimer because the 74 is no longer going to appear in PAX.
I'm not sure the 74 is useless, but I will say that Bob Bailey is just no Bob Bailey.
Speaking of which, your biggest winner
is
the
Bob
75 Bob Bailey, not the 74 Bob Bailey.
Really?
Yeah, that's not shocking.
So I think there are a lot of possible budget picks here.
I think it's Bob Bailey.
I think Bob Bailey would be a really good budget pick. But I think this is, again, a good place to just put in a plug and point out that this Greg Luzinski bat, as good as it is, he's still going for 3K. And
I was sort of hoping you were going to say George Grantham.
Grantham is fine too, but, we got him at second base, right?
Fair enough.
But I think Luzinski is worth kind of putting in a plug for. Eddie Yost is cheap. Bob Bailey's cheap. All of these are cards that I think you want in the mix between kind of silver and silver caps. And I think of the three, Yost at 72 overall is probably the one that's most likely to keep playing throughout a lot of the cycle. Let's see, what are we actually running here? So I am running Yost both ways. And you notice that's one of the nice things about him is usually with the DH, you're thinking about people that are splitty and, maybe you're running someone who backs up one position and then as a platoon bat and you run a couple of those. Yost is really nice because he sort of plays a credible third base if he has to, but I can run him both ways at DH just fine, and he's got a 99i both ways, right? He's also got that gap power, Greg, that you like a lot.
Yeah, so I'm running Trout just because that's the safest way to get his bat in the lineup, V right. And then Tettleton v left. I think a lot of people get distracted by the big I, the triple digit I, but we alluded to it earlier that he does have almost 90 power on both sides. So he's a big bat, and he's a switch hitter and positional flexibility. Like, there's nothing to like dislike about that Tettleton card.
Nope. I like big bats. That's
And I cannot lie.
I was going to ask for clarification there. So
Yeah. There's some other interesting options too, though. Like, I don't know if you would
I think
consider it the
everyone picked up
best,
on that.
but if you're looking at like extreme bats that you just wouldn't play in the field, we have that Kel card, we have Luzensky, Woodling is good, and that Harry Heilman. I think people sleep on that card just because the outfield defense is so bad. But if you have the space and you can carve out, a dedicated DH, like, I don't know, check it out.
One other that I want to put up, who I think you can play both ways here. I'll just put him up versus right and versus left here. This Pat Burrell card, I think is a really interesting. I think is a really interesting DH, especially in cap tournaments, because of that eye.
Yeah,
with which one, Mike?
I didn't have much luck with Harry Heilman. I also didn't have much luck with Bryce Harper, the 79 Harper.
Yeah, that
filling kind of similar
like
roles,
it should
right?
be good, and it's just not as good as a lot of these other options, I think.
Yep.
So,
yeah, it's hard sometimes to tell how the cards that don't have one thing that they do extremely well are actually going to play. So like Harper is just like pretty good at everything, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And it turns out that doesn't quite play at the moment, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it does. No, never mind. He's left-handed. Now would be his time if there was one.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're a little behind schedule, but maybe we probably should talk about pitchers at least a little bit, right? Unless we want to do a part 2 of this stream. So.
Now let's hustle through this.
Let's see if we can roughly get through pitchers. Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be too much that's surprising, but
so last time, one thing we found last time was that there was a fair bit of a difference between what the model and the observed data were giving us. In particular, because the observed data, kind of people were willing to throw someone like Ellerton or Sanders that doesn't have the stamina. So let's see where we're at now.
Please tell me the model doesn't like Splitorf anymore.
The model doesn't like Splitorf anymore.
Okay, but are you lying about it to make me feel better, or is that actually the case?
No. The model doesn't like Splitorf anymore. Actually, there's now a really clear number 1 in Pedro Ramos. And this card was just kind of under the radar. And
no, it wasn't.
When it first got released...
Oh, no, it wasn't.
And it's a great
card.
That
was... I had several conversations in a few Discords about that card.
I was going to say we have Greg and I have a chat going with one other guy that plays a bunch of Silver, and I'm pretty sure my immediate response to the spoiler for that card was, "Holy what the."
Yeah, it's sick.
No, I think Pedro Ramos is just by far and away.
Look, it's right-handed best. Carl Hubble, except better.
This is just the best pitcher in Silver right now. Hubble's the second best pitcher in Silver, but Hubble's also fun because you notice that Hubble has the reverse split.
Yep.
Right, but so does Ramos. Ramos is a righty with a reverse split. It's just a crazy.
Ramos is excellent.
And
the one other card I want to draw attention to here is Johnny Vandermeer, because that card, that shape is my jam. That's all.
I think Vandermeer is also an excellent.
Vandermeer's left-handed red wit.
Yeah, that's a fair comparison.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Harshman, Mr. Black, Harshman still plays up really well in Silver Cap. No, so number 1, there's not a lot of left-handed pitching there. I believe Harshman is a 72 overall. So, he's a pretty affordable option. I don't think he's, unmanageably splitty. I think he's just fine. Yeah, I really like that Harshman card, even though he's not. He's in my pin, not my lineup.
Yeah, I
Or
was
my
going to say
rotation.
Harshman, and I haven't really played a lot of silver for the past month or two, to be fair. But Harshman, while I was still playing, and I don't know why this would have changed that much, was like easily my best bullpen arm.
Yeah, I love him out of the pen.
Love that guy.
He converts well. He's kind of a cap option. Tom Zachary is also an interesting card, right? So Zachary doesn't quite play quite as well in silver at the moment as he does really high up.
Wolfgang is just right-handed Tom Zachary. They're just releasing bizarro versions of the cards we already have.
Yeah, Wolfgang's really similar, and that's kind of an interesting, again, kind of interesting look there. So both Zachary and Wolfgang, that's a profile that if you kind of play them in like a diamond cap or something, that's a great profile. And some of that movement's being wasted because you sort of saw that the silver bats that are doing best are more sort of eye heavy and less power heavy. So a lot of that movement's getting wasted here, but becomes really useful when they play up a bit. So I think those are both going to be cards that you really want to have if you play a lot of caps. Right?
No, Mr. Black. I didn't mention
Strider before the re-rate was really interesting, but unfortunately,
I didn't mention Spencer Strider because it's too soon.
Yeah, there's a Spencer Strider sized hole in my heart right now.
You mean
they massacred my boy?
The Spencer Strider that went 13-5 or something in Perfect League, and then they absolutely clobbered his rating while like bumping him up to gold. So at least in the model, yeah, Busby's not up there. If we go to the observed data, so
I love Busby. For the record, he's in my rotation.
I hate Busby. I'm infuriated that he's still as good as he is.
Busby and Nagy and like they're perfectly average. But yeah, let's see. So in the observed data, you see a few people are running some of the lower stamina starters than at least Warbot would be comfortable with. So Warbot sees Ellerton and Sanders in that group as great relievers instead of kind of 4-inning starters. Ellerton's going to be really effective for as long as you pitch him. It's just with that 39 stamina, you're not going to throw him that long. Let's see. And then I guess maybe the splits don't matter so much, but if you're like running openers or something, and just to highlight a couple people that maybe wouldn't be that high up but are super splitty, that Bob Turley card, great against right, even if that control is a little bit terrifying. And Arnold Carter, I don't think I've ever seen that card.
Nope.
I can't say that I have either.
Nope. I mean, like I probably saw it flipping through stuff, but there not for a minute would I ever look at a card with 30 stuff and be like, yeah, I want to play that.
Unless, and he not be a 40 overall in a cap format. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm just like, no, I don't even own that card actually. So it must be a newer release or something.
Huh.
Actually,
I mean, he's out there. He's got an L10.
Yeah, no, and the funny thing is that actually he's got a 62 sinker. So that 29 stuff is going to go way up out of the pen. So actually, I think I may grab one of those cards and run him out of the pen and see how that goes.
I assume he's a side armor.
Pretty well.
Or like a submariner.
Yeah. All right. So we're trying this a little more quickly, I guess. We never quite seem to make that work, but let's see. Your biggest winners so far. So actually, Pedro Ramos, despite kind of being relatively new as a release, is still your biggest winner. He's just that good. Busby up there because he's being run a lot. Santana's up there, right? Matt Morris card.
A
I wouldn't have
little
expected it
surprised
to
to see
play well.
Zachary up there still, but that's probably just like OG teams with all of the expensive cards carrying him to victory.
I still think Zachary's probably like a top 5 option. I just think he's dropped down a little bit.
He's fine. I think you're. I think Warmoth Adams sixth, which I'm willing to believe.
Yeah, I think that's in the right ballpark at least. So
Yeah, I would agree with that.
let's see some budget picks. So most of these are actually pretty affordable, right? Zachary's expensive, but almost all the cards we're talking about you can get, 2 or 3K at most. Red Wit I think is missionless, so you actually get him for a few hundred if you want him. Vandermeer, I'm not sure if the price has quite come down yet as a newer release, but certainly
It's
will. I think it's
1800
under
right now.
3K. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 1800 right now.
This Larry Jansen's also an interesting card. So that's also one I hadn't really looked at much. One of these all-star releases, but that's also got a fun shape and kind of a good way to punish, some of these eye-heavy. If you got a bunch of people that are running all these cards like Grantham and Donnie Bush, then suddenly Larry Jansen's a great shape to face those, right? Because you can get away with a lower movement. So, and Dan Heron's still playable, right? Is one of the early missions actually running here. Let's see. So we're both running Ramos. We're both running Hubble. You're still running Busby actually, right? So did you want to talk about him a little bit? I know we got a question there.
Yeah, he's not great. You look at some of the other shapes, like the Bob Fellers, those high low cards that are seeing a lot of success right now. He's just aggressively decent at most everything. And it's weird. I haven't seen his numbers really dip too hard. You're seeing it a little bit with some of the power creep coming in, but I think what saves him is his pitches, like the actual pitch rating on pitches. I know this is probably a controversial thing to say this year. I think that the pitch ratings actually matter.
I think they absolutely do when you convert them to relievers. Let's see, Ken Johnson. Let me see where Ken Johnson ends up. So if we went past the top 10, let's see, the Platinum Series Ashby and Tapani. Ken Hill, I think, is a new special edition card, but doesn't end up in the top 10. So Ken Johnson then ends up 15th. So, kind of in the same range. So Ken Johnson has the same shape as, say, Larry Jansen. But the difference is that Jansen has 14 more points of control and Johnson has 9 more points of stuff. So I think Jansen just ends up ahead of Ken Johnson. Right? So, okay.
Yeah.
So the pitch ratings matter in a couple of ways, as I understand it. So my understanding is that the way they rate players is they start with some kind of overall rating, and then once they have the pitch ratings, they use that to determine a fly ball, ground ball profile, and they use that to determine how splitty they are and based on between the pitches and the arm slots. So, an over-the-top guy throwing mostly fastballs is not going to be nearly as splitty as a sidearm guy throwing sliders and sinkers, for example. But my understanding is that the pitch ratings kind of are already baked into the stuff, movement, and control ratings that you see, with the exception that if you convert a starter to a reliever, then it's going to recalculate the stuff rating because you assume the starter's only throwing their 2 best pitches as a reliever. So that's why we mentioned that that essentially a card. Who was the card we were just talking about? Sorry.
I think it was Busby has 2+ pitches. So if assuming the logic that the game
Yeah.
chooses his best 2 to feature, then he would have 2+ pitches coming out of the pen. So
Yeah. So the idea is Busby's stuff is 75, but that's coming from an 81 sinker, a 67 curve, and an 80 slider. If you then throw him
yeah.
out of the pen, you assume he's only going to throw the sinker and slider. So that stuff rating is going to go up by just not throwing the curveball. That's kind of the logic,
Yep.
right? And also, you notice that Busby, yeah, I guess that's right. And because he's throwing kind of not a lot of fastballs, but he's throwing a lot of breaking balls, he's a fairly splitty pitcher. At least that's my understanding
Yeah,
for kind of the
that's
logic there.
it. He does have pretty significant splits. And I'm not going to try and like
All right. Well, I think that there's a more authoritative answer. I think.
yeah. Oh, he does. He is splitty, so he's perfectly fine out of the pen. I have him in the rotation. I just like him. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just saying Az Axel's answer there should be, I think, more authoritative.
Oh,
So, so I think that should be
interesting.
the correct answer. Um, all right, and then finally,
What is it?
should we talk some relievers real quick?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, throw him up there.
I'm sorry, but we can pour one out for Clay Holmes, who has now graduated twice from being the best silver reliever to the best gold reliever, and now to being possibly the best diamond reliever. A couple of these actually. Mantiplays has also graduated. Yeah, Sir Anthony Dominguez graduated. So actually, yeah, all these live cards have changed. So I guess let's see where we're at, right? So the model now does mostly like relievers over the converted starters. So Scott Sanders is a converted starter, but otherwise, it's really looking at relievers and kind of saying these are your top cards right now. And still a couple live ones, right? So the relievers with high stamina generally got bumped up in these latest updates. That John Schreiber card, I think, is an absolute monster. It was a monster iron at 52. It's still a monster bronze at 65. You know, if you're okay with a card that splitty. I don't know. Any others you guys want to point out here?
No, I think there's a few standouts specifically in silver, and then there's a lot of other. I don't want to keep using the same term, spare parts, but like there's a lot of leftovers. The ones I really like, Johan out of the pen. He's great. Who
Here,
else?
I'll put up the data while
Talked
we're
Awesome.
about
doing this because
Hirschman.
Johan out of the pen has
Oh,
been doing absolutely great.
yeah.
Yeah, we've already mentioned Harshman.
Asa Lacey, like I or
His lazy's been great.
the big shape that I like now is the high low. We kind of alluded to it earlier with like the Bob Fellers
Yeah.
and things like that. But I think that's really playing up right now. I generally try to short of Bob Feller, I keep everybody mostly above 40 control. That's kind of my
This
threshold.
this Johan also, again, it's a three pitch pitcher where when you run him out of the pen, now he drops that slider and he's only throwing a 96 fastball and a 108 change.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
Uh,
he's
and
amazing.
I want to sort of mostly agree with Greg here, although I will say that I have no problem running Red Wit. Like, it
Oh
doesn't
no,
quite.
no.
He doesn't quite get to 40 control, but card's great.
Red Wit's been in and out of my bullpen all year, so or
yeah,
since he came out.
and yeah, actually that's a good
I like
point.
that card.
That's a good point. So Marmol, as much as that control does feel absolutely terrifying, I don't know if you're more terrified to step in against a guy with that kind of stuff and movement and low control, or if you're more terrified as a manager. But something terrifying either way, right? But he's getting
Column
people
A.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could argue he's even been unlucky, right? He's got a 4.32 FIP and a 4.69 ERA.
And did Dan Espino make the list?
He didn't quite, but I think he's going to be. I think he's actually
Okay.
the future
I
legend that comes closest. Him and Asa Lacy probably come closest to playing here, right?
Yeah, I have them both in my pin, and I love them. But I was just curious what they were saying, what the Warbot says about Espino.
Let me see how far down he has to go. Not in the top 25 at least. So if you go further down, Bruce
Don't tell me
Ruffin,
that.
Live Joe Kelly, and Luis Garcia, Rudy Cianez, Mike Adams, Tommy Hunter, Terry
Hmm.
Adams. Um, yeah, he's really not up there.
Interesting. How many, if you don't mind me asking, not to derail the whole thing, how many plate appearances do you have for him? Like against?
Oh, and the data. Let me see if I can check easily. I don't have a lot of the data.
That's no big deal. I don't want to
All right.
derail the conversation. I love that card because he's got, if we trim it to 2 pitches, he's got 2+ pitches. He throws 97, 99. He's a fly ball guy, so he checks a lot of blocks for me. Um, he's got 42 stamina, so you could also spot start him if you want. Um, you're not going to get a whole lot out of him. Maybe, I don't know, 70, 80 pitches at 40, but I like that card.
So the live Matt Moore Cavacom, we don't have him very high on kind of a silver list, but definitely should be playable in bronze, right? Because it's only a 68 overall, so it's going to be eligible for all your bronze tournaments as well.
I'm coming up on a hard out at 7 here.
All right,
So
let's see if we can.
Okay.
Let's see. So we'll mention a couple of cards that weren't in the top 10, but just worth mentioning if you're going to run a specialist. This Gregory Soto card in particular is really interesting, and if you can get your manager to only use him versus lefties, that's just incredible in a 65 overall, right? Um,
yeah,
all right, so I guess finally, let's see what we're running here. So, right, First, a few budget picks, real quick. Pretty much all the guys we mentioned are cards that you can run as budget picks. So, we've kind of thrown a sample of them, just in terms of sort of easiest to hardest to get. But really, all the guys we're talking about, a bunch of live cards, and even the ones that aren't, are generally pretty doable. Um, and then finally, what are we actually running? So I'm running a 7-man pen, and you're actually running 8, right? So you're running 13
I am,
pitchers in
yeah.
total.
Yeah, so I've been on the fence this year. Early on it was 7, then it went to 8. Now people are back to 7. I personally am very, very like precise about my fatigue management. So I have a high fatigue threshold on my bullpen, um, which means that I'm going to go through a lot more pitchers. So I feel like to me to go deep, especially once you get out of the 32 man format or the 32 team format and get into the 64s and the 128s, that I feel like you need that extra arm to go deep.
Yeah, I feel like I've done okay with 12, but the big problem I have with the bullpen is I just can't find enough lefties. And at the moment, I've actually gone with just the one lefty out of the pen, which feels like it has to be a mistake, but seems to be winning a few more packs. Just because the gap between the available righties and lefties seems to be so big right now. So I'm effectively running like Paul Shuey is, like a lefty, almost a lefty stopper,
hmm.
just because he's one of the few guys that's allowed to face a lefty that isn't Tug McGraw. Um, I think I maybe want to start running
What
someone like
threshold are you
Bruce
talking about?
Ruffin or Jack Harshman.
Harshman's great. Uh, he's on mine. He's on my cap team. Now he's a starter on my cap team. He's out of the pen for my best of 7. But I love that card. Can't say enough good things, especially in a 72 package.
Do you do pitch count or percentage? So
Well,
I
those are
actually
for two
don't run
different things,
either.
right?
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Ali. You go first.
I say those
So
are for 2 different things,
so
right? Like,
the like bench if player is below this threshold of that's what I was talking about for the threshold of like fatigue. So mine is 92. If they drop below 92, they're out of the game, or they're not coming into the next game.
Yeah.
And
yep.
then for pitch
So
counts, generally I do 25 out of the pen and about 100 If it's somebody like, say, and I'm trying to go fast, guys. If it's somebody like Ellerton or one of those low Scott Sanders, one of those low stamina guys, then maybe 85, 89, something like that. But
So I have my position players set to 97. My bullpen arms at like 85, I think, and I have a global relief pitch count at 35, and then I go in and set pitch counts on individual relievers if they're actual like true relievers with low stamina. Right, like I'm perfectly happy to have, like a Jack Harshman throw 35 pitches in relief, but I would prefer not to have. I'm trying to pick an example, and like all of my relievers are starting pitchers. Like a Steve Olin, I would prefer to have. Throw like 20 or 25.
Yeah, and I'm actually not running a pitch count or batter's face limit at all. I'm just using the sliders. But in general, I think I found that for fatigue management, once I get a reliever in the game, if they're able to throw multiple innings, I'd much rather they throw themselves out and then be down for 2 or 3 days than like Tony La Russa style, run through 5 pitchers to get, 9 outs or something like that.
Yep.
no,
That absolutely
for
works
me,
better.
I kind of do the planning based on 5 innings and then 4 out of the pen. So if I can get like one starter, 3 out of the pen, that's kind of what I generally am planning against.
One caveat is that most of the time, if I am for whatever reason engaging in opener games, I will usually set the opener to face a maximum of 3 batters.
I do the same thing.
It's like, because most of the time, I'm like, they're in there to face the danger and then like turn it over to what is hopefully a better matchup for the next 6, 7, 8 innings.
Yeah.
So get him out before the damage stacks up.
Okay, so that's probably a good place to end. A little longer stream than maybe we were planning, but we had a lot of good questions. Are there any kind of last questions we have before we wrap up? Maybe in the meantime, I should see if I can find somebody to raid. Anyone good running?
Let's see here. I think I was supposed to mention that the optimal strategy for the live bronze double round robin is to put your arms in the air, spin around 3 times counterclockwise, and say esports.
No. Don't you have to I thought you break something and throw. Is it your left or right shoulder?
No, that's just superstitious.
Oh, that's the Three Amigos. The hamana.
No, it's you gotta really like lean into the esports, or it doesn't work.
I'm probably showing my age from that reference, but yeah.
All right, let me just see who we can.
So are we all.
Just trying to see who we can raid here. Oh, it looks like Tranquil Hill Farms is got a stream going. Maybe that's a good one to raid.
Once again, shout out to the Twitch TV / follow Durden. It's sort of a nice partner stream. They cover other stuff that's also excellent. If Alex is still in chat and wants to mention whether or not we're doing the backyard baseball project tonight. Oh
yeah, if you're doing that,
I want to say that
the stream started, we can raid that instead.
That's often a Thursday night thing. I don't know if it's happening. I don't know if he's still in chat.
It doesn't look like it's up yet. I'm just checking.
And then of course you can hit the mothership for Dish's dead ball extravaganza tonight.
Let's hope we get some left-handed pitching.
Poke Alex in this format in particular. I don't know. I'm almost hoping for just like everything is terrible.
If you're still looking for drops, I think Tranquil Hill Farms also has some drops, and he's a really fun stream, especially if you're in a European time zone like me. It's kind of nice to be able to wake up in the morning and get some OTP content. So definitely give him a listen. And we'll see you all next week. If you've got some requests for which format we should do, just let us know. See y'all later.
The earlier the better, because planning is good.
Yes. All right. I think this raid's gonna work. If not,
Raid.
see.
Raid,
All right.
raid,
I think it
raid,
works.
raid,
All right.
raid, raid.
See you next
Did we
week.
go?
Did that work? I hope.
It did. Yep.
Did it?
I went right into an ad pre-roll. So
Went right into an ad.
I can
Yep.
just imagine the last word someone hears before they did this work, and then it's like, "Broop," and then the other stream loads up.
All right. Let me just see how to get the
Uh,
stream stopped.
I've got to run. Thanks for joining us today, Greg. It's great to have
Yeah,
you.
thanks for having me.